Yeah. All right, can I bring this meeting to order, please? This is the Tuesday, April 30th, 2024 meeting of the Flemington Planning Board, Zoning Board of Adjustment. Please rise if you're able to get the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So this meeting is called pursuant to the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act. Both adequate and electronic notice of this meeting has been provided by way of publication in the Huntingdon County Democrat and Courier News newspapers on or around February 1st, 2024 and January 30th, 2024 and April 4th, 2024. Do I still have to say that one, or that was for the April 30th meeting? I'll say it. I said it already. Yeah. In addition, notice of the meeting was posted at the Borough of Flemington Municipal Building located at 38 Park Avenue. And any accessible agencies there too, posted on the municipal website, provided to the municipal clerk and distributed to all persons of any requesting copies of the same. This meeting is being recorded with both audio and video and may be rebroadcast. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues that are relevant to what the board may consider in reaching a decision, and decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. All right. Before we get going, then, can you need a motion? We need to change the agenda around if we can. We didn't do roll call. Sorry, I'm getting way ahead of myself. Roll call. I need to do roll call, please.
Yes. Mayor Karam, here. Councilwoman Fasaro, here. Mr. Campion.
Here.
Here.
Mr. Hill.
Mr. Here.
Mr. Dashon and Mr. Cook are excused. Ms. Weitzman.
Here.
Mr. Semino is also excused. He might be coming in late, I'm not sure. Ms. Swingle. Here. Ms. DeMario, have we heard from? I don't know. Okay. Mr. Eckel.
Here.
Joe.
Here.
Ms. Kaczynski.
Here.
Mr. Clerico.
Here.
Ms. McManus. Here. Mr. Troutman is excused.
We're gonna mark Ms. Mario absent.
Yes.
All right, so
Sorry, go ahead.
I'd like to adjust the agenda as it's been issued, just to move things around, because our elected officials are excused from items 11 and 12, being those are Board of Adjustment issues. I'd like to bring item 13 ahead of those so that they can be involved in that and then leave as they free will. So I'd like a motion to amend the agenda to move discussion item 13 ahead of current items 11 and 12. All right, can we see the roll call?
All in favor?
Oh, we're doing all in favor on that? Carla?
Yes.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Any noes? Seeing none? No. Thank you. All right, so let's move ahead with item 1 is public comments. This is a period for public comment of items not currently on the agenda. Does anybody in the use the raise hand feature to identify if you'd like to make a comment, or anybody in the room? Anybody in the room want to make a comment at this point? All right, seeing none. Item 2, mayor comments. Please.
I don't really have any comments this week. Thank you.
Okay. Item 3, council comments.
No comments.
Okay. Item 4, HPC comments. Dennis, you have anything for us?
I have several items. We had a meeting on the 17th and we had several approvals. Eileen sent them to everyone on the planning board. One was for a fence at 24 Broad Street. Another was a porch renovation at 39 Broad Street. Another one was a garage renovation at 22 Pennsylvania Avenue. And Liberty Village, George Valone reviewed the plans with the HPC, and the HPC provided a memo supporting the Liberty Village. He also acknowledged that if they did work at 3 Church Street, they'd come before the HPC before work began. And then we had one denial. It was 148 Main Street. It was a follow-up request for chimney demolition. And we said we needed more information on the cost of repairs versus demo, as well as proposed roof materials. The only other thing is a reminder, we have the historic house tour on Saturday, June 1st from 11 to 5. Still looking for volunteers for part of the day. Anyone that volunteers gets a free ticket for the tour. That's it for me.
All right, thanks, Dennis. Rescheduled in, I know, which made us, we're both into that, but it's a fun time to be involved in everything else. So I encourage everybody to be involved in that if they can. All right. Item 5, professional reports. Tara?
The only update that I have is with regard to the billboard. I'm waiting for a determination or a confirmation of the date that the sheriff's sale, the auction is going to occur. I don't have that back from council yet. I will say that typically in foreclosure matters, they are allowed up to 3 adjournments. But since the borrower in this case really didn't put up a fight, I don't know if that's even really going to happen. So hopefully I'll have a date by the next meeting, and then we'll start seeing a little bit of
Thank you. Ben?
I don't know if they can.
No, I just, the chair item, resolution compliance, that might probably include you at some point, so, yeah. We allowed Mr. Troutman to take a break today, but Mr. McManus, do you have anything other than? what would- Oh.
They were together for a long time.
The signs from where I'm looking. It says-
We know where the bread in that family.
Oh my gosh. Wait, that's the same, right? I'm sorry. Oh my gosh. Mr. Clerica, other than the planning board checklist.
No.
We'll come back to you for that. All right, thank you. So item 6 is approval of the minutes from the April 9th, 2024 regular meeting. Can I get a motion to, does anybody have any comments that they did ask to Eileen beforehand on those? Yeah. Anybody has any comments on them, additions, no? Okay, then can I get a motion to approve the minutes from April 9th, please? Was there a vote? Second. Thank you. Take the roll call, Eileen, please.
Councilwoman Pissarro,
abstain.
Mayor,
Did you move it?
You moved it, you can't.
Yeah, you can. If you're gonna move it.
Yes. Okay. All right. So,
I'll make a motion.
So Harrow's first and Spring.
Mayor Carroll,
Yes.
Ms. Swingle?
Yes.
Councilwoman Pissarro?
Wait a second. Oh, I take that back. I wasn't.
You
here.
were,
That's
you
why
were,
I-
yeah,
I
no,
was
it was
in
Central Station. so
Yeah, I was
it
here
a
for
lot.
10 minutes, so I don't feel like I should. Yeah.
all right,
I
let's
was
start
there.
here.
I got the airplane.
Okay, let's back up.
And then we have a motion for those that were here.
You were here,
I was
okay.
I was here.
Somebody
Somebody online.
Someone
has to leave a
online.
second.
Exactly.
So move.
Who's quickest to? Give a second from those people online, please. For the minutes. Anybody? Please. We can't move forward without it.
I'll second. It's hard to hear, but I'll second. I finally realized what you said.
A second for the minutes, approval of the minutes. Thank you, Dennis.
First, and that was Joe was second.
Oh my gosh.
All right.
Ms. Swingle?
Yeah.
Mr. Show?
Yes.
Councilwoman Pissarro?
Abstain.
Mayor Carroll?
Abstain.
Mr. Campion?
yes,
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Weitzman?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Thank you. We got there. We got it down, lots of chance. All right, so item 7 is a resolution 2024-08, appointment of a conflict attorney. It's not as dramatic as it sounds, it's just that, Kaczynski cannot take part in one of the applications because she's, conflicted. So we're appointing somebody that can act in her place for us on that particular application. So the attorney is.
That was,
John,
Yes.
Who?
John Galena.
John Galene, where did that name come from?
I asked him if he was available and if he would be willing to act as conflict counsel. If he had a conflict with that particular matter. So I presented that to the board for consideration.
At the last meeting?
Via email,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, that was
Two
really.
minutes in the last meeting.
That
Did
was-
we get costs from him? Or did he submit costs previously?
I'm not sure, I kind of didn't get to.
Oh, no, I do not have a reschedule.
Okay, now, typically, when we do conflict counsel.
I don't
we get
remember
the
seeing-
exact same rate.
I don't remember
Right,
seeing
so-
any emails from you though.
No, it was really more between the chair and,
Okay, so I'm gonna state this for the record. We did not put out for request for proposals, any of the professionals on this board this last year. Correct. The chair, former chair missed the deadline and then the board concurred to move forward and keep all of our current professionals. So I want it on the record that we must go out this coming year for request for proposal, including for conflict positions. Because that's stressing to me. That
Yeah.
There's been no input by by this board or review of any resumes of any attorneys for conflict positions. So, and I don't have any problem against Mr. Lena at all. This is about procedure.
Understood.
Okay.
Understood, and apologies, we didn't get it out.
well, we could wait until next.
No, if we
meeting,
need to,
you would like
if we need to do this, it's just going
Well,
forward.
he will be here probably next meeting on the May 14th.
That would be
It would
the night that we need them.
Yeah, no, I think we need to move forward, but,
We can wait for
and this, did somebody make a motion?
that. Yeah.
Okay, I'll make the motion provided that he, uses paragraph.
And again, that would typically be, that's what I told him, and that's what that would be typically be, it should not change.
And then we can say that it's just this one application, and then
Right.
if
We could do it
we could do it then, right? Just keep it to
So this
one.
is like,
we
you know,
do
like we said,
one.
this is about the whole point, because when we did a conflict, engineer, it was like, you know, taking a scrub brush to raw skin, right? I mean, it was, you know, who's gonna get names and, you know, do we trust this one and that one and, you know, whatever. So, you know, it's, I think that the board has a right to like consider multiple people and not just one person.
Right.
So,
So, yeah, we can, I'd like to stress, when we, on the second motion, right?
I did, I made the motion.
Would you be prepared to add to that motion that it's just for this application?
Yes, for this application. I don't know which one it is.
Well, it'd be
It's,
for the meeting, because I think Karen has a conflict on the 14th, and there might be other, and there's at least one more application.
Right.
So he
That's
might be
a
here for
continuing
the.
application then.
No, it's actually, there's a new application for
Another
the ironworks.
hearing.
But wait a minute,
They have not submitted any new plans. They're new.
oh, okay,
This-
that was
they
what I was worried about.
Yeah,
Because
no,
we're-
no.
requested to be placed on the June 25th agenda.
You're
They need to send plans in, they have to do replenish escrow.
You know, this is why we need a checklist, because
Right.
we never should have been given a conditional approval.
Exactly.
That'll make it a full year since they put in their application. And we gave them conditional approval, a full year in June, and they've had one
Completeness.
for completeness, and they've had one hearing. And it's just been a waste of time.
Okay, so this would be there for item 12 specifically, the application 2024-02. That this conflict
So
attorney
then
would be working for,
there might be any, he might be here for the entire meeting on May.
and then if the other one comes, we'll have to see. Okay, so,
Yeah,
do we
motion.
have a second on that motion? Thank you. I'm gonna take a roll call, please, Emily, on that.
Mayor Carroll,
Yes.
Councilwoman Pissarro,
Yes.
Mr. Campion,
yes,
Ms. Giffen,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes,
Ms. Weitzman,
yes,
Ms. Swingle. Mr. Echo,
yes,
Dennis, did you hear me?
We need your vote, then.
No, I didn't. Yes,
Okay, very good.
Thank you. Okay, item 8, resolution 2024-09 Hunter and Tea House LLC, application 2024-01. We have the resolution that's distributed to everybody.
We do. I did receive some comments back from applicants' council as well as the board professionals. If I can just read them into the record, they're very minor. First, the references to minor site plan should be changed to preliminary and final site plan throughout the resolution. A couple places that happens. Brett Harris was here in place of Ms. McManus that night, so we'll make that change. In the middle of page 3, there's reference to exhibit A3, and that is to be changed to say the revised plan was dated March 13, 2024, as opposed to March 22, 2024. And there were references to improvements of the sidewalk along Church Street with Belgian block curb. That should actually be changed just to say that the applicant agreed to reconstruct the sidewalk along Church Street. And that is it.
Well, just a question about reconstruct the sidewalk, because the sidewalk has to be reconstructed as per the historic district, which is Belgian block, so why did they want to change that
Belgian
now?
block is the curb.
Oh, okay, all right, so,
They are relocating the driveway, and they are reconstructing the Belgian block curb
mhm.
where they're relocating. But the rest of the sidewalk was in poor condition and it's separated from the curb, so there's no reason to replace the curb.
So as we wrote it, it sounded like they had to put Belgian block across the whole sidewalk.
And they still agreed to comply with all comments in the professional's report, so anything else relating to that would be.
Okay, right, thank you for the clarification.
I thank everybody else for the clarification. So we do have the people that are able to vote on this application and motion and second. Mayor Carroll, Chairwoman Giffen, Mr. Hill, Mr. Pissarro, Todd's not here, Jeff's not here, Mr. Campion, Ms. Weitzman, and Mr. Semino's not here.
Make the motion.
Okay, can I get
second the motion.
Mr. Hill?
And Ms. Mayor?
Yeah.
Mayor Carroll,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes,
Councilwoman Pissarro,
Yes.
Mr. Campion,
yes,
Giffen,
Yeah.
Ms. Weitzman.
yes,
I mean, I'll make those changes, get that out of here.
I will note that, given the bills that I've received today, that, there will be an escrow deficiency, so I will get a letter out tomorrow, and maybe, yeah, and I'll let them know.
Okay, there is a condition in here that all escrows have to be replenished, so I'll change the resolution, but I would hold it and not release it, have it signed until they get that.
Very good. Thank you.
Really quickly, just want to say, in case you want to make any other changes, it is true that applications 11 and 12 are zoning board of adjustment applications, but they don't involve D variances.
Okay,
So because of that, the mayor and councilwoman, if you would like to stick around, are able to participate. It's only when the zoning board is acting as a D variance, which, yeah, we don't have here.
okay, we all learn something new every single time.
There we
That's
go.
my thing to do.
Every so often.
Do you want to also? We'll leave the agenda as it is now, we changed it, so. Think it's right. All right, so item 9, resolution Chick-fil-A Inc. application 2023-07. We have a resolution number on that, and would that be resolution 2024-10?
I didn't want to, because because it's not ready yet,
Okay.
I don't want to number them because maybe Central is gonna be done before Chick-fil-A. I'm not sure.
So that's.
So, I get kind of, yeah, it gets a little confused when we put resolution numbers on the agenda.
All right, so we're.
They'll both be done for the next meeting,
Nine and
so presumably you could just go 10 and 11.
We did orange
But-
ones.
you know.
Well, I did have a resolution for the conflict attorney. Do we need that resolution?
That, you already gave that number.
I did give it a number, but we did not. I just wanted to point it out that it was a resolution. That's why we have a number on that one. Should we?
Yes, and if we don't have a draft one, I'll prepare one with.
Yeah, I think we have one for the conflict planner.
Yeah, we can, okay.
So if we can
Use
just
that.
modify that to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You want to send that over to me and I'll modify it?
Or I'll. you know, have that.
She'll be back. for this.
So items 9 and 10, we'll next meeting in May 14th. All right, so what else we got? Item 11 is discussion of the planning board checklist. So I'd like to hand the mic over to Mr. Clover to, you issued quite a lot of documents for us to review, so I hope everybody's reviewed it, but the idea of today is to kind of start this process off with a vengeance, with Mr. Clerico's work he's done, I'll review it, and this is the time to start adding in if there's any major additions we want him to make, but let's hear his
Right.
introduction of it, please.
And I also have, and I asked that in the audience have Lindy from my office who actually do all work.
Oh. Thank you.
As I explained in the email that we submitted, and we thought the best way to do this, so we didn't lose track of what we're currently requiring in this transition over to what we may be requiring. And again, we're using the format of the last version of this checklist that I put together for the town of Clinton. So we started with that basic format, but again, in order, not everything in every town is the same, so we did the side-by-side comparison. So you can see what items, and the way Lindsay set this up, the actual text in here that's dark is from the original town of Clinton checklist, and stuff that's moving over from the Flemington checklist is in blue text, and stuff that's it's in a red text is essentially additional stuff that's not in the Flemington checklist. So you kind of see what we're adding. And at the end of the day, you pick and choose on this. You know, if there's something you think is not appropriate, we don't include it. If you think there's something we're missing, we insert it. And I'm just going through it tonight before the meeting. I know there's a little bit of duplication in here, but we can, it's a little bit administrative stuff, and I really should get some input from both Kara and Beth on this before we kind of finalize it. So as you said, this is sort of a first shot at this thing.
Yeah.
And so these checklists are set up. They're in two different sections. There's a section for the documentation. That's required, applications, checks, disclosure statements, things of that nature, environmental impact statements, things of that nature. So it's information that has to accompany an application. The second part is information that has to be on a plan that's submitted as part of the application. So just going through the first part, and again, our current checklist just has a list of information, whether it's part of the documentation or whether it's something that's on a plan. It's really not distinguished on here. I don't know what the best way to go is. Kind of go through this generally or point by point.
Generally.
So generally speaking,
Yeah.
we need to go through this, you know, administratively, we have on here a 3-week submission. I believe that's the format we're using for requirement. It's not in the current checklist. So we're advising applicants that this is information that's been filed 3 weeks prior to a meeting. Most of the stuff is basically a straight carryover. Obviously, we need an application. If there's a fee calculation that needs to be submitted as part of that. I changed this back. We had like 15 or 17 copies. I changed it back to 4 copies. I think that's what we're requiring right now for hard
Yeah,
copies.
we might want to do 5, because it's nice to have one for the planning board record, but then also all of the commissions that would like to come in and want to see full-size plans. It's nice to have another set that they could all use, and they're not using the record one. So
So that's a change from what's written in our current checklist, but it's what we've been doing for quite a while.
Yeah, and we have the electronic files as a requirement. I'd like to keep that.
Again, administratively, applicant's disclosure statement if they're a corporation. If they're requesting any variances associated with the application, identify what they are, including a narrative explanation of what the variances are. The certification, again, this is currently in our checklist. It was added some years ago. Certification from the Borough Water and Sewer Departments regarding submission of fees and the status of their payment of utility bills. A certified list of property owners, and again, off to the left is all the different types of applications that could be submitted. Some the various types of subdivision applications, the various types of site plan applications, the various types of variances that could be submitted. We kept on here the sign plan. That's going to a subcommittee. I don't know if you really want to keep that anymore. I left it on here because it's on your current checklist. But it doesn't even come before this board. It goes to the sign committee.
Can we step back, before we get on such back to what you just said about sewer and water, and we make sure that they're paid in full? That's for, like existing projects that aren't. But do we need something, and maybe my champion needs to weigh in on this, do we need something for like, a Form A, for if they're asking for, if they haven't even.
I believe we have it in there someplace else.
I didn't see it in there.
Again,
Okay.
That's required. Is
Yeah,
that what you're?
yeah.
yeah, there, again, I tried to, extrapolate over into this other checklist and stuff. So there might be some duplication. Hopefully we didn't miss anything, but we may have duplicated some things in a couple of places.
I'm sorry, go back to signs. I interrupted you, well, whether or not we want to.
Again, up to the left is all the different types of applications, and then you'll check the check mark there whether it applies or not. So the item is listed there. It may not apply to a lot of different types of applications. Again, we tried to be consistent with what we're currently requiring. There's a lot of information here, so something might have gotten missed or whatever, but that's, we kind of administratively have to go through and make sure we didn't leave something out. Or check something that maybe didn't need to be checked, or forgot to check something that maybe should be checked. The signed, just going down to the signed escrow agreement. H is your completed Form A from the Borough Water and Sewer Department. That's new to this checklist because it's obviously unique to Flemington. H, again, well, no, this is something the town of Clinton had will serve letters from the Borough Fire Department and Rescue Squad. I don't know that, and that's something Clinton was very much in tune with, whether that's something you want input on applications.
I think, personally, I think it's really important
Okay.
that the fire department and the rescue squad weigh in
And
about,
police,
and police about, especially high-rise buildings or high-density areas. And that is different than the fire marshal. So the fire marshal is not on, is he on this with Bob? I didn't see him either about giving his report.
We certainly,
For the Borough of Flemington's item I.
actually, would it be the fire marshal would be speaking for the fire department?
No, the fire department, the fire marshal looks at the structure, if it's an existing structure or a proposed structure to weigh in on fire code. The fire department's will serve is, yeah, we have the apparatus that can put fire out in this building. The different,
So you've got three, fire,
Yeah, but-
fire and rescue, fire marshal, and police. I think they should.
Yeah,
all-
but we need to expand that out, then to almost 3 lines.
So fire and rescue companies, that's not all one. It's Flemington Fire,
and
Department.
Flemington Rescue.
Flemington Rescue, right, so that's 4.
So just before you move on, Bob, can I just check? So just for you've got the description of the thing that we're looking for in the center part. The left part, the check marks on there, those come from generally what we ask for now, or are those by ordinance or?
No, they're generally, if you go over to your checklist, they're
Right.
generally what's required. Again, there's a
So-
lot of similarity, but they're not identical.
Right, so I'm just trying to identify about what I want the board to look at when they're looking at this after we've talked about this today, is that This is where we can have input, we can add lines to it, like we just did with that discussion. We can also add check marks to say, we want this in this case, or we don't want it in this
It's your
case.
check.
This
you
is
can do
where
whatever you
we
want.
need to be doing our work, deciding where these check marks go, right? Just so everybody maybe.
And keep in mind, the fact that you have it on the checklist and it's a requirement, doesn't, an applicant could ask for a waiver, obviously, there's,
Right.
when they can do an
That's what
application.
the right-hand side part does, is it clearly then identifies. what-
Yeah, I
what
did
you have a
explain that.
question
So
here,
the
right?
columns to the right of the requirements, that the applicant fills that out, he indicates whether he provided the information or he indicates if he thinks it's not applicable, and but he also indicates if he thinks he's requesting a waiver.
Right,
So the applicant is telling you, I gave you that piece of information. So when we review the application, we say, yeah, he gave it to us. And they said, you know, he said he gave us a corporate disclosure. We looked, well, it's not here. So we say, well, no, you didn't. You
right.
said you did, but no, you didn't.
So this will be that when you get to use this in reality, it will be easy for board members to see what waivers are requested on this
If-
spreadsheet situation rather than a list.
When people get used to this,
Mhm.
my report essentially would be filling out the third column.
Mhm.
Maybe adding some footnotes, maybe doing a short letter saying, this is all the information I got. And based on the above, recommending you grant these waivers. I mean, the letters, instead of being 5-6 pages long, will be a page and a half long.
Right, so
Um,
for the board, what I want to say is we've got important work to do filling out the check marks as we want them, because the important part of this is then when we get applications forward, the decision on whether we choose if they're applying for a waiver on something that we strongly felt should be on the checks on the left-hand section, we're going to have to really think, that's our moment when we decide whether we apply waivers. So this is the point that we can really button this down of what we feel is required and what we feel we would prefer not to give a waiver for, and would probably need a really good description for it. Is that fair enough to say?
Yeah.
A really good explanation of why.
Right, and on these waivers granted, what I would normally do, I put my recommendations in there, just so, and I don't think I have it on here, but I did a little summary. That's one of these, I think, where I just put like abbreviations like TW was just temporary waiver, or, yes, they do. They're actually on the last page of this thing. Whether I think you agree that the item is not applicable, whether it's not required,
Right.
and whether it's whether waivers recommended for approval, whether it's recommended for denial. And some of these I put in the form of a temporary, we don't
Right.
necessarily need it to move forward, but we do need it before we act on it.
Can you talk a little bit about all the DEP, stormwater and water line items you have in here and requirements that are in here?
Well, they're in there. There's the stormwater.
I'm glad they're in there.
Yeah, no, they were sort of in our current one, but our current one was done, I don't know how many decades ago, and it just didn't, the inference to the stuff was there, but it's more specific. So yeah.
So they have to, when I read that, they have to have like, I don't know, let's pick on Cut Glass, because they have no approvals right now, right? So if Cut Glass came in and wanted to do a new site plan, Cut Glass would have to show us that they've already started the application process at DEP, or they'd have to show us the DEP is giving them no further action or what?
We're not changing any of the statutory regulations. An applicant can, he has to show us his stormwater calculations. We do the review. If there's DEP permits, any applicant is still subject, any action you take is still subject to DEP.
So we're not requiring that they start an application process with the DEP until they get.
We have, I don't think we have the authority to do that.
What about DOT if they're on a state road or county approvals?
I believe it's the same thing. I mean, a lot of cases, they're somewhat foolish if they don't make the initial approach. And if an applicant, our report will say they're on a state highway, they need a certain kind of permit. If we have some comments on it, we might offer the board some comments on it, but it's still whatever, if we see something that looks wrong, if we see a site distance issue or something like that, we'll make a comment on it, but it's really out of our jurisdiction.
The only thing I've seen, certainly we would condition any action on receipt of their final approval. There would also be a condition that if their final approval in any way changed or was approved by this board, they'd have to come back. The only thing I've seen is proof of submission to like the county planning board, if it's necessary. Even there, that would have to be a condition, but sometimes they'll put in there. You have to show that you've actually made the application. That I usually don't get pushback from applicants because it's either a waived fee still at this point, or it's nominal, whereas your DEP, your DOT applications are much more significant, so they may tend to wait on those. But I agree with, but we can't really require it, but you're kind of putting yourself behind the 8 ball. If you don't at least know what the heck they're gonna say before you start going through this whole process.
And I'm only asking because, if we go through a huge hearing for something, spend a lot of time doing it, and then they go to the DEP, and the DEP says, yeah, well, no, you gotta change this, you gotta change that, then they come back here, it's like,
Yeah.
you know.
Is,
their
and
money,
what
their
is,
time.
is there a mechanism in which, within our processes that we have, that we can expect them to have started that without, you say we can't do it for completeness, it's not, we can't put it in here to say it has to be done, yes, for completeness. But during their application process, do we have any teeth to be able to say, we expect it to be at least started at that point before we give approval or not?
Again, we really can't.
No.
We can raise, like I think Bob said, they could turn around and say, well, listen, you're never gonna get a DEP approval of this permit because X, Y, Z. So usually a savvy developer or applicant at that point is gonna say, jump in, but is gonna say, okay, why am I gonna continue paying escrow and time and professionals for something that clearly, he's referencing the statute or the regulation that is not gonna allow me to get this permit approved. I mean, so it's kind of, we cannot,
We can't vote no on that as saying that that's not gonna happen, they would.
we can't now, because,
Right.
and we cannot require that we get any approval that's higher than ours, we cannot require they get prior to our.
But again, as part of our review, if we see something that we think is not compliant, we'll make note of that.
Right.
If we see that there's.
Like, one of our redevelopers didn't even know they needed to go to the DEP.
I'm sorry,
One of our redevelopers didn't even know they needed to go to the DEP.
well,
So, I mean, this is like,
you'll run into this from time to time. I mean, you can only review what you get in front of you, and you review it the way you see it. If you see something obvious though, if there's an established floodplain elevation and somebody's coming in with buildings that are below that, you point that out. Actually, that is one element that would flip over to us because we have that control under flood damage prevention regulations. So again, there is a lot of there's some overlap between local regulations, local jurisdiction and state regulations. The reverse of it too is if an applicant goes to DEP, gets all this permission from DEP for a development, and then he comes to the board, and as part of the board's review and approval, they change things around, then he has to go back to DEP for reapproval. So I assume that's the logic and why the law is set up that way, that you have to defer to the higher, if you want to call it a higher authority. You deal with it, that's under your jurisdiction, and it's subject to whatever other agencies have jurisdiction over.
Right.
So do you know that you?
are you gonna say?
I'm sure you can.
Make a suggestion and say,
An acknowledgement, like, the applicant acknowledges that his or her, application may need additional state level.
Bob will put in his review letter, approval or letter of no interest from any agencies, including blah, blah, blah. And we would then, as a condition of any approval we have, we would be compliant with not only any and all, but whatever is referenced in his report. I mean, like I said, a lot of this kind of works itself out 9 times out of 10. Certainly not 10 times out of 10, but because people understand, the risk that you're taking. So you kind of want to, they have pre-meetings all the time with these agencies, so you can get some sort of idea. In some instances, it may make more sense in their mind to get, one permit approved prior to coming here, but you still need your set of plans. So you're still moving in 2 directions at the same time. You're not going to get a DOT or a DEP permit approved if you're not showing them the plans that they need to be submitted to you to show how that's even going to work. So,
But it's certainly a reasonable question for anybody on this board to ask during a public hearing, for them to give testimony about. And to.
where they are. I mean, every
Yeah,
time,
we've done it before.
where are you with
Just saying,
status of your,
we can't put it on
absolutely,
here, but we can,
absolutely,
for the board to remember that they can ask that question. If
100%.
they notice nothing's been mentioned.
Yeah, and just FYI, at the last environmental commission, the environmental commission is gonna work with the Shade Tree Commission to update the list of trees, because it looked like it hadn't been updated in 20 or more years. You know, trees that were popular in the 90s and 80s that have now found to be difficult, ugly, and dying all over the state of New Jersey are still on our list, so they're gonna be maybe putting in jointly, I hope, some kind of communication to update this. And I don't know if that list is that an ordinance, is it just?
It's in your landscape ordinance,
Yeah,
with
okay.
a list of, I think it's recommended of trees.
Preferred, I think it's called.
Yeah. If they want to make recommendations, I'm happy to review that. with the
Yeah.
landscape architect.
Yeah, they want to get, you know, more into the native New Jersey hardwoods, more than that. But, you know, the still with the landscape repairs for those kind of things. So,
Right. So the main aim of Bob introducing this today for the board is that we need to now go away and on basically red line and go through this with a critical of what we want this to say, what we think this needs to say. So my main question to the board at this moment is, this is your chance to ask Bob if you need any clarification on how to go through that process, or any of the professionals, what you might need in order to do that, because I want us to come to the next meeting with, I want us each to have provided red line comments on this.
So, you know, we got this document in 3 different ways online,
Yes.
not all of which were, nothing that we could redline. You know, they're all PDFs of some sort, and, you know, looking at it on a small computer, I'm not sure what the answer to that, because you can't have 15 people redlining.
Yeah.
So it's not a
Right.
criticism, it's just a comment. But it's very hard to like look at the computer and go back and forth to the checklist part, then you have to go over. I was wondering if somebody could print out copies. I mean, I may be that's the only person here, but I find it very difficult to like go back and forth. My computer screen is a laptop, and yeah, and it's like getting all the little check boxes on one side and maybe this much of the first column of what it is, and then I have to go all the way across, and it's really hard, and then I have to go scroll up to see what that column is, you know, at which category. It's really hard to like work with. So I don't know if we can get bigger ones, like, I don't know what size you have, Bob. Is that like?
I just printed out, yeah.
And it's all fit on one piece of legal paper?
Yeah.
Is it
No,
possible?
it's a ledger paper.
It's like,
You want me to print this out and send it to you?
Oh, like 11 by 6.
I don't know how many other people on the board would like to have it in print. I would like to.
I thought we did one editable. As,
There was a
What's it?
PDF editable, yeah.
There was the end of so much.
We could send we have, it's in an Excel file. We could send that up.
See, I would rather work paper personally. But, like I said, if you ever use writing in Excel, then you're gonna have 16 different colors and track changes.
No, yeah, I won't.
Print it out. I'll print it on this size paper and
I would
just
love,
tell me
I
how
don't
many.
know
people
how
want.
many other people in the board want one. Who would
I
actually print it out?
can put my own out, but certainly I may want to vote for them, like a
I would
11
like
by
to-
17 bench version.
Yeah.
Yes.
Three.
Yeah.
You want me to send in like a dozen or 10 or Eileen or?
Nobody online is raising a hand. I don't know about my
Are
camera.
they all, Hannah would like one,
And I would like one.
probably Mike would like one.
Donna would like one. Okay.
Let's do that. Let's say
And then what, have them,
11 by 17.
Are they in color too like his?
No.
That's nice. No, but no,
Because you
because
did
that,
mention blue.
the
you
color is
mentioned blue.
important, right?
No.
Bob, is the color important?
Yeah.
Right, the color is important.
We tried to do it that way so you can see where the
Exactly,
information.
what was there, what's new. Yeah. We're gonna use those horrible Bartlett chairs with the paper for this. So we're not killing any trees that are important to Flemington. And,
You mentioned Butler.
Okay. Half a dozen and 8. What?
Yes.
Well, you got 4 online who said, I think 3 online said they'd like it. You got all 4 of us up here in color.
I'll deliver 10 copies.
And then if people can pick them up
Pick them
here,
up here.
and then not have to mail.
And
them.
we had do you want the combined version or do you want the final version?
The one that we're suggesting for.
I think the final.
Yeah,
Like,
we're
So
suggesting-
you don't want to see what we have now versus what we're proposing, is that the difference? You have what we have now right next to what we're proposing.
But I thought it was in color, like you said.
Or is it not, well, the final version is the final version.
Oh, then I guess,
They're both in color.
What these back?
no,
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, they are. No,
no,
no, it's just the combined version. It's in color. Because it was telling you where information came from.
then that's the one I want. That's what I want, is the combined one, so I can see what was there and what's new,
Okay,
please.
sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
10 copies,
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
10 copies.
And anybody that wants to get in touch with Eileen about picking meal copies up. So does anybody, we've talked here, anybody online have anything they want to add right now, or do we understand what process we want to go through? I'm trying to do this.
So
Okay.
I do, Karen. I was just wondering, could we add like a question, is the property in the historic district? And then if so, what's the official designation? I think sometimes people don't realize, that whether it's in or not. And I just thought to add that on there as well, if it's in the historic district, and then what's the property designation, that might help as well.
Yeah,
Don't know if anyone has any other thoughts.
on your red line version. I just mean if we have any questions for Bob about how he came up with this, how to navigate it, or what he's created, this is a great time to catch him before we go ahead and drill down into what we want to look at within this checklist that he's created. Are we
Yeah,
good? Are you good with
the
that?
comments that would come back would be just like that.
Yes.
You should
that's
have
exactly.
some provision that says whether it's on the, well, probably it'd be a document, something that would come back into the application.
Yes, because I understand HPC, did you have a question came through that it was suggested that, so this, I'm just again pulling out things that will go in now that you need to think about, Dennis, is, I believe it was suggested by somebody that your process should tie into how it comes in, that it should have gained approval from somebody before it comes to you, for instance, so thinking about the flow of the information of things, of applications for you that we might have to consider too. Or is that's probably a conversation for the other thing we need to set up. Between the departments, when we have flow between the construction department and the permitting.
Okay.
There's questions on, does it go to permitting first, then HPC, what, all these different flows about things around, it's a separate conversation probably.
Yeah, it's not the construction and permitting would have input on the application, that would be more like post approval
Should be,
review.
but then it's just like, we've come up with some confusion about how we're moving things around the system.
Okay.
I think that's just what I'm trying to do. I shall add that on.
And
my
one of the-
deadline.
And one of the things to consider, I don't know if it would really be, I mean, I guess it would have to be on the checklist in order for us to. What a lot of towns will also do is take it out of the board or borough's hands and say, you have to send 4 copies here, but then you have to show you sent 1 copy to the fire department, 1 copy to the police department, 1 copy to the HPC.
Right,
And usually if I'm doing that from a private side, I'll just use the same cover letter and I'll just copy everybody and put with enclosures on file. So clearly you can see that it went here, it went there. We don't have to worry about.
But the
going
burden on the
forward
applicant
with
would
everybody
be-
so we're
gets it.
asking for a demonstration that it happened at the completeness point, which is.
And that to me has always been the easiest way to do that.
Right.
Like, not every town requires that. There's still a lot of towns that want 13 or 21 copies and then
Mhm.
they'll distribute it.
Right.
So again, not something we have to figure out now, but something
Something for the discussion that we all need to.
Because if
weigh
that's
on
the
which way it goes
problem,
forward.
kind of putting it around everywhere, and,
That is.
putting it on the applicant.
What's
That's
getting lost.
actually a good point from a procedural standpoint. If you go look at item, 8 that we just added, the police, we had the fire,
Yeah.
rescue, police, who else we had?
Fire
marshal.
Fire, rescue, fire marshal.
A fire marshal. We could change that around to say proof of submission too.
Yeah.
Right now, this thing says receipt of a will serve letter or a
Right.
response letter back, which infers that they filed it with them.
And got it already before completeness, which we don't always get before.
Yeah,
completeness.
so, I mean, this comes up a lot in Clinton, where they made the submission too, but they don't necessarily have the response back yet.
Right,
Do you want to hold somebody up waiting around for them to get the rescue squad to send them something? Or most cases in that situation, they come back and ask for a waiver on, they say, hey, I filed, but I don't have a response. Yeah, give me a temporary waiver.
right, and that's part of the discussion we'll have as a board is
Right.
because I feel that we've got we're minded to want to have that in place before we start the public hearing, for instance. And that in the past, when we've given waivers for things at completeness, we haven't received them and they're not there, and then it wastes everybody's time in a public hearing. So we have to work out some wording of how we can achieve what we want to achieve within the remit.
Probably temporary would be the way.
Yes,
to
so
go.
we could change H around the proof of submission of the application too,
Hmm.
the 4 entities.
You want I.
So
You
that's
could
a
also
good-
add, HBC, if you're in the district, then send it to the HBC, send it to the
Right.
environmental.
And that we'll have to put language in, that says that we expect that to come in enough time for the board to have seen it before the public hearing too, we're gonna have to add this language in. Because that's what we want, is those reports to come back, enough time for the reports to come back from HPC and environmental and
Correct, and I
Change
think
on
we,
to the hearing.
we can talk about language, because I think we
Mm.
have to marry getting it versus delaying an applicant unnecessarily, because maybe there hasn't been
Right.
potential or the ability to get a letter.
Or there's a quorum
Yeah,
issue.
Exactly.
Right. That's exactly why I'm putting the board on notice, that it's gonna be a good discussion about, we're gonna get right into the weeds of those things. Of how we feel and what we want to put on here, and this is what this can achieve, it's not just some boxes. Oh, Darren is raising his hand. Can we,
Yeah, I'm just curious, like, so this is for, the checklist is to determine completeness, right? Once we determine completeness, then the clock starts in terms of, like, for instance, HPC needs to provide a submission to us within the 30 days or whatever that might be, at least from the local, as far as, so I'm just trying to curious, like, I mean, I definitely agree with having them show proof of receipt that they've emailed all the parties, but do we want that is that more of not the completeness checklist, but the pre-flight checklist before we schedule the hearing, that we've got all the responses back? I think it's kind of like, we're maybe mixing two things here.
that's exactly the discussion we need to have next time though, because we need to, that's what the things we're gonna button down, where we're gonna land on those things as a board.
And I also think that, we're requiring that 3-week submission for our professionals who, go to work every day and do this all day long. And some people do this on weekends too, but our volunteers at like HPC and the environmental, they meet once a month.
Yeah.
So there has to be a submission early enough to those commissions to get a response back before we have them.
Well, the way this reads right now is the checklist requirement is to have the response. Again, like, if we go to the last item on there, J, public, to utilities, JCP&L and the gas company. Applicants rarely ever get, I mean, they file, but they rarely come in with, hey, here's my letter. So most of the utilities won't necessarily technically review an application until it's almost approved by the board.
But that 3-week clock that you have in there, Bob, for, to give our professionals enough time to review everything. Is that 3 weeks from the time they submit it, or 3 weeks from the time of if they're deemed complete?
Well, and that's actually something I wanted to talk about too, because if this is the checklist of items, the board has 45 days to review the items to deem it complete or incomplete. So that 3 weeks, I think we're gonna talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
Because
it's
you actually statutorily have more time. to
45
review.
days for us, 3 weeks for you,
Correct.
and our commission
Correct.
meet once a month. So if they submit the third Thursday of a month, they just missed HPC. And now we gotta wait 30 days before HPC meets, and then HPC gets to write up a report and send it in. So we're talking about 5 weeks.
But again, I think,
Oh.
John's point, let's not mix up. That's why I think the proof of submission is important for completeness, so we could check that off. Then I think that, think about how much time we want to be giving them to review it, which would come when we schedule a hearing. So let's say tonight we have, so for instance, we have a completeness, like any matter that's on for completeness tonight. Check, check, check. All right, everything's here, everything's complete. Let's say it's a big application that requires all of this. Do we want to schedule it for the second meeting in May? No, because we're not going to get it by then. Do we want to schedule it for the second meeting in June? Because that gives enough time for HPC, fire, police, rescue, everything else? Yes, and it gives the board enough time to, or the professionals enough time to do their review letters, things like that. So I think if we're gonna just focus on the checklist now, that's what we can do, and then that secondary part comes later, once we see what we're dealing with. Because you said it may be different if we get it, sorry, beginning of the month versus the end of the month, because you may have just missed that next meeting.
Is that something that we can put from form a checklist, or is it just,
Like I said, please be advised that,
right?
blah, blah,
That's
blah.
what I'm saying, the advisement of how, what we expect that so that they can't necessarily expect to be put on the next planning board meeting, for instance, even if they've submitted paper, right, or even the second one after that, given the timing. At the point when you achieve completeness, we will then discuss the date based on these factors. So they can be aware of when they can see online when the meetings are, and they can be aware of that at the date they come to completeness. No, we will be saying, we're
And it's
not
just
going to
because it can.
schedule it without these.
You know, what do we have on it? We may have big applications, where somebody comes back in, somebody, we may have big applications coming.
So we can put that in, it's managing expectations and setting the store of what we're gonna do with it. right?
Like Bob said, you could, this is yours.
Right.
You could put, as long as it's not gonna be contrary to legal, what you can do, you could put whatever you want.
Well, that was gonna be my next question, in terms of we're saying we're gonna come and have that discussion, is it then, you're going to, in that discussion, give us the legal fees, or are you going to prep something beforehand on what? Then, what then we say the checklist is, we'll be able to do it during the discussion,
Yeah, because I
Okay.
don't think there's anything in here that's illegal.
right?
You know, I mean, but we recognize that we can't require certain approvals prior to us making our determination, so you
Mhm.
can't really require a checklist. per se.
Right.
I think it's just more logic and timing and what works for the borough.
But then some of these, because we haven't had a checklist for some types of thing before, I understand. We will need to do ordinances to put some of this in. Is that then something then that Beth will identify out of which parts need an ordinance and pulling that out for us? Will we do that after the next meeting of the process? What? All of you can answer that. I'm just trying to work out what our process will be.
I think, my recommendation is that the board get comfortable with the checklist and thought put it together, and then the next step is going to be to determine what extent we need to adjust the ordinance.
Right.
But I think that you should be comfortable with this document so that the ordinances can flow from that rather than just.
Yeah, if you have general provisions, you want to say you gotta submit 20 copies and stuff like that. So
Right.
You want to clean up those inconsistencies.
And
Absolutely.
it could be as simple as saying that the ordinance must, the applicant, the ordinance is revised to say the applicant must comply with the checklist.
That's
So reiterating instead of going through.
right.
Are the three of you going to work together to make sure there's no redundancies? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Are the three of you gonna work together to make sure there are no conflicts or redundancies in the checklist? Okay, before we get together next time, we talk about more.
Yeah, that's more of an editing thing. Like I said,
Yeah,
I
I
found
don't
one
think-
to make where.
If you were all gonna edit it, then I don't think that any of us should bother. with
No, I think,
on any-
honestly, I think from the board member's perspective, it's general stuff. Why don't we require this, or
Right.
why are we requiring it?
Right.
Or you know what, you don't say you want it for a variance application, why not? Why don't you require it? Yeah, that,
Right.
or, or I don't understand what this one means. I think that's the level of the, like I said, the editing to make sure we don't have duplication, and that we're, whatever. And the whole idea of this is really to have something clear and concise, but also so an applicant can pick up this and read through it and say, okay, I need to do that. Okay, well, I don't want to do that. I want to, it's supposed to I mean, somebody might look at this and say it's overwhelming, but the idea here is to actually simplify things somewhat, or at least make it clear, what it is they're supposed to do as part of it.
I think it's great and I appreciate and thank you for your work to get it to this point. I want everyone to really take the next few weeks seriously, really come up with some great questions. This is our chance to really make a difference on how we process our applications and process all our things. It's great. Thank you so much for the work on it so far, Ron. And I don't find it scary. I'm a spreadsheet girl. To me, it looks really exciting, but that's sad. But
I need
I'm
some
an
swim
engineer.
lane. I need some swim lanes. Yeah, I'm a process manager. Swim lanes.
You need to
The timing,
All right.
with what, American Bus Ends, I'll try and figure that out.
We'll get into that.
Yeah. When we want to have this more detailed discussion and have our review or listening.
I think we should be able to fit it in at the next meeting, shouldn't we? Because we've only have those two possible.
Yeah, is that enough time for
approvals.
all the
Well,
four?
we might need two goes through it, so I want to do it. I want us to, while we're thinking about it, everybody think about it. We'll put it at the beginning of the meeting when everyone's fresh after dinner, and we'll have a good, be prepared for a good discussion about it. You won't be here. Well, I think we're
Well,
gonna
that's
need to
fine.
go into the week after the meeting after.
So
anyway.
that's fine, I'm just saying, and I could give
Right.
any thoughts or whatever,
Initial thoughts on things like that.
but we'll have talked.
Yes.
So really,
Right.
we'll all be on
That's
the
when the
same page.
professionals will be on full enough for our discussion next
Correct.
time. Because I want to get going, I don't want to delay the meeting after that.
I think
Let's see what we can get done next time, we might need, but this board likes to get into the weeds on these, when we really do these things, people go to the nth degree, and I love it, and that's what we need, this is our opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
So we might need to do over 2 meetings, let's keep that in mind, I'm gonna try and bring everything next time. Is that okay? Does anybody else have anything they want to discuss tonight on this, or should we move on with what everyone understands what we're going to do? I'm expecting at least 4 questions. We've got at least 3 sentences on each. No. I'm just wasting the semester this term. But anyway, okay, thank you everybody for the input on that. We're going to move forward with that on the agenda for next time. Thank you, Nancy. Yeah, no, that's right. Okay, let's then move on to new item 12. Application hearing, Your Smile LLC, application 2024-03-42-17.
Okay.
This is 153 Broad Street. Application for non-conforming use of the building. Do we need Clara to kind of explain this to the board? This is an unusual thing. We haven't really done this before, right?
Yep.
And do you want to do conflicts first of all, or just do it after the description?
Nope, let's just start right off with that before we do anything. Anyone who feels that they have any direct or indirect conflict, either personally, professionally, or financially, with regard to this applicant.
I do. Dennis.
Okay, Dennis, then we'll have you recuse yourself.
Okay. Do I drop or do I stay on and just don't say anything?
It's really your call, after
Okay.
you have the completeness and then chair items, so it's really up to you.
Okay, I'll stay on and just be silent.
I have to go black, so they're not really taking part in the call. You can listen, but we won't look at you. Yeah. You turn your video on, Dennis, you can listen. Just can't take part. Thank you very much. Yeah, exactly. We can't see you and you can see us. Okay, so explain this to the board, please.
Yeah, so let's start, and we'll just start by saying, notice has been, published and mailed in accordance with the, municipal land law. The board has jurisdiction to act in this matter. And what the applicant's requesting is relief under your section, this would be section, I'm sorry, 68. So it's, section 40:55D-68 of the land use law. So this is not typical. Usually we operate under section 70, A, B, C, or D. This section 68 happened when inevitably a municipality changes its uses that are allowed in a particular zone. Or changes the zone of the property, changes something with regard to the uses of the property. And many times you have uses that have been existing for quite some time and were legal until that point in time that you changed the ordinance. So what the land use law allows for is two ways that that can become legal. Number one, the applicant can go to the zoning officer within 1 year of the change of the zoning, or the change that use no longer being allowed, and say, here's my proof, this is how I've used it. It was legal, now it just became illegal. Please give me a certification of a pre-existing non-conforming use. But that has to be within 1 year of the change. If it's any time after that, they have to come before this board for this section 68 approval of the same thing, pre-existing non-conforming use, and this board, acting as a zoning board, grants or does not grant that use. What they have to show is it was legal at the time that the use started. It continued to be legal through the time that the ordinance changed and then continued to be used that way to today. So basically, you guys have heard that word abandonment before. You've heard the continuous, it's right in it, non-conforming but continuous use, all the way through the time that it became illegal to today. If you find that based upon the evidence presented, what the municipality has, because the applicant submitted a very well detailed letter dated yesterday that goes through what they were able to find and what they're going to present to the board. If based upon your review of that, you feel that those criteria have been satisfied, you can issue this pre-existing non-conforming use that would allow legally this use to continue, with one caveat. If they want to expand it, they want to make any other changes, they have to come back to this board. So as long as they continue to use it in the same way, same use, and under the same conditions without expanding the scope or the size or anything like that, this would be legal according to you going forward.
Can I ask you a couple questions? So currently it is dental, so if they wanted to change it to doctor, that's a change in use?
Let's let them make their presentation.
Okay,
Because that may become important
okay,
based upon what I'm seeing and based upon what the ordinance
so the
is.
use isn't office to office to office, it's actually the use that's happening inside the.
Let them make their.
Okay, so my other
because I
question
think that
is,
does come-
my other question is, I always thought there was a notion of we'll stay with the land. So if this was approved and then the law changed, why doesn't it stay with the land?
Because you decided that that use is no longer allowed, well, for two ways. First of all, you decided the use is no longer allowed. And second, you bring up a very good point, because if this applicant was able to show that a use variance at some point was granted for this property, basically saying that the use was changed, we acknowledge it's changed, and by virtue of the granting of the use variance, we're allowing it to continue, different story. But this is just the way the land use law is. It may not make much sense, but because essentially it wasn't approved by any board at that time. It was just allowed by your zone. So think of it this way. If you have a subdivision or something that's protected for a period of time, okay, against any change in zoning, they can come, the land use law allows for them to come in for additional time periods of protection. And then it gets changed. If they exceed that protection period, you change the zoning, even though you had an approval way back when. The time period for them to act and have protection from that zoning change without doing what they needed to do has expired, so they have to come back. It's just one of those, I don't know if that was really as good an explanation as I thought it was, but that's really the issue. The use itself was never approved, it was just allowed because of the zoning. They didn't have to come here for anything, it was just automatically allowed.
My question follows on, which is, if they'd done what you said they were permitted to do a year after the change,
Yeah.
we wouldn't need to do this either. That would so, and also, if we choose to grant this now, that is in perpetuity unless they change the plan of the building substantially or.
So unless God bless you. The language is unless you exacerbate the non-conformity. So you could do that a couple ways. You could expand the scope of the use that they're presenting to you. You could expand the size of the building. You could decrease the size of the lot, because presumably that increases the non-conformity. There's a lot of different nuances to that.
So this has nothing to do with the transfer of the property to somebody else?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. And it essentially, again, I'll let Mr. Or, thank you, I was gonna say, Orban, I had your first name, explain, but this is a product of that because it was discovered during the transfer. So I'll turn it over.
So, on that note, so 5 years ago, the zoning officer could have discovered it, said, oops, this is no longer.
But then they would have still needed to come, because when was the change? It was 20.
Okay,
When
we're
did
getting
the-
into, we're not getting into the type of application, we're getting into that, so let's do that.
Let's let him explain it to us.
Thank you
Thank you
so
very much.
You're on.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kaczynski, and thank you, Madam Chair, Mayor. It's great to be here in beautiful historic Flemington. Thank you for having us here this evening. I know we filed this application just a little while ago, so I just want to thank the board and all of the board's professionals for accommodating us this evening. Your professionals and your staff have done a great job in responding to our open requests and putting review letters together on relatively short notice, and we thank them all for that. So, Madam Chair and Ms. Kaczynski, as you indicated, we have a unique type of application for a certificate before you this evening. I don't even know if I've introduced myself yet. Let me take a step back. It's Derek Gord from the law firm of Inglesino Taylor. We're over in Parsippany, and my client this evening is Your Smile LLC, sole member Dr. Malgorzata Munz. She's a dentist right there. She just waved at everyone at the board. And the current owner of the property is Dr. Sada right there. He is my sole witness for this evening. So just a little bit of background about this property. It's identified as 153 Broad Street on your street address, and it's block 42, lot 17 on your official tax map. As Ms. Manis identified in her memo, the property is comprised of approximately 0.33 acres and is located in the borough's single family home zone district. It is improved with a one-story structure housing a dentist office, which has been there since 1997 and utilized since 1997 as a dentist office, as I will get into in a little bit later. Surrounding properties are developed with mixed uses, multifamily residential, have some single-family residential. There's some other commercial uses across the street from the subject property. I will put Dr. Mustafa Fakhrizadeh on the stand to testify later to put this on the record for an official, so there's an official record of the testimony, but I'll summarize briefly. Dr. F, if you don't mind me calling you that. That's all right. Okay, thank you. Dr. F acquired the property via deed dated September 8th, 1997 from 153 Broad Street Associates. And just to respond to a note from Mr. Clerico, pursuant to my review of the title policy, there are no restrictions or encumbrances on the subject property. So based upon some historical records which we received in response to an open request from the borough, it appears that the structure occupying the property has long been utilized as an office building, even prior to Dr. F's 1997 acquisition. And I attached some exhibits to the letter, which we provided yesterday or today to evidence this. So there was a site plan waiver application filed on or about February 19th, 1992. And if everyone has a copy of that letter, we can just turn to Exhibit A.
Hey, you know what I'm gonna do really quick, and I don't want to
Sure.
cut you off if you're gonna get into this. So we technically haven't seen this application, yes, so I'd like to just take that vote on this tonight, but I'll let Bob talk. This goes back to what we were talking about before. We don't have a completeness checklist for this type of application, so Bob did do an email dated April 27th, where he just kind of went through where we are. So Bob, we're just gonna go through that. And then just
Yeah, well, just to simplify this, I actually cut and pasted a section of the ordinance that talks about general provisions or requirements. I just use that as a template. And I went through and I told you with the initial submission, what was provided, what was not provided. In terms of the items that were not provided, what the applicant has submitted as of yesterday, I took a quick look at it. The description of the property is now incorporated in this narrative. That was item A8 on the attachment I gave you. certification of the tax collector, item D was provided. The affidavit of ownership was incorporated in his response, so that's item F, that's now been provided. Item G was certification of corporation or partnership interest. I didn't see it, it just is a sole owner provider or?
Yes, she's a sole member of the LLC.
H was protective covenants. Again, there's a reference here. The title wasn't actually provided, but the representation from the applicant's attorney is that there are no covenants or restrictions or easements that would affect the use of the application.
That's correct.
Yeah, at some point you may want to actually just file a copy of the title, search, you base that on.
That's something.
Item I was the, again, first, the location of easements are indicating there aren't any. Existing survey was not provided, they've now provided as part of their documents, a document that appears to be a survey of property. And then the rest of it's really details on a plan, they're not providing a plan. So in that context, it's not really a completeness issue necessarily, because again, we don't have a checklist saying they have to provide a plan. But in terms of, they provided a lot of documentation as part of their submission that relates to the information that you're going to hear tonight about prior zoning and uses and whatnot. So I would say based on that, I think we could deem it complete. Again, as part of this hearing, if you hear anything or you think there's information that's missing and you need to make a judgment, you can certainly ask for it. If they can't provide it tonight, you can carry it here.
So unless the board has any questions of Bob or the applicant, we would need a motion in a second to deem the application complete.
Can we get a motion? I'm told I can't do a motion.
Sorry,
Thank you. A second.
The wise people are doing all the work.
Yes, I noticed that. All right,
It was the second, I'm sorry. Again?
right.
All right, Councilwoman Pissarro?
Yes.
Mayor Carroll?
Yeah.
Mr. Campion?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Weitzman?
Yes.
Ms. Swingle?
Yes.
Mr. Eckel? Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. No, well, actually, if it's not a board, it's a board of adjustment, but then,
No,
We're acting as a board of adjustment in this matter specifically.
So that's seven.
so
but the mayor and
We're not dealing with D variance.
they can.
Only the board of only a party acting as a board of adjustment can grant this section 68.
So they're not officially board of adjustment, though, are they? By,
So, yeah.
But I was thinking.
I don't want, anything to.
So technically, let me say this, technically, it's on a joint land use board, you can act in that capacity.
Right.
When you are acting to approve just a variance, no site plan, because all you need is a single family property and all you need is a setback variance, you're acting as a board of adjustment. So only 7 members are voting, but you're not acting to approve a D variance, which would not refuse the mayor and council.
Because it's not.
but they're not actually on the board of adjustment
Correct,
per se.
correct. But you're functioning as a board of adjustment in that instance.
All right, so we'll leave it to you to tell us who can vote. Is that fair?
So we have,
Well, up to Ms. Swingle 7.
and what, and there's one more, no. because
No, we have,
Dennis, we have Hannah.
well,
Hannah's a full member.
Hannah is a full member. Mr. Shove is recused, it would be Mr. Eckel.
Yes,
Yes, you can go ahead, let him.
Mr. Eckel. You just say yes.
yes.
Thinking this should be continued, yes.
But, yeah, Dennis is
Oh,
recused.
7 is our minimum. It's not our chief.
Yeah, acting as, yeah, okay, go ahead. We're good.
Thank you.
We are making it over.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members of the board.
Okay, so before we go there, I'm sorry.
That's
8.
Yeah. I lost track. There you go, making sure.
No problem at all.
All right, so now that we've cleared all that up, we're gonna mark as our preliminary exhibits like we always do the application and supporting documentation is going to be A1. The notice of publication submitted by the applicant's counsel is gonna be A2. The letter dated April 29, 2024, submitted by applicant's counsel will be A3. And then we do have Ms. McManus's review letter of April 26, 2024, which will be PB1.
All right, thank you so much. And I invite you to take a trip down memory lane with me or down the rabbit hole as we go back into the 1990s. One of my favorite times. So, we did some historical digging on this property and it was very interesting. So as I noted, Dr. Ralph acquired the site in 1997 via deed. We did receive a site plan waiver application that was filed on or about February 19th, 1992. And I'm turning to Exhibit A now, my letter of April 29th. And this is a letter, it's directed to the Flemington Borough Planning Board. It's from Heritage Consulting Engineers, as I said, dated February 19th, 1992. And there's a note here. This is a gentleman, I guess at the time the board only had men on it. But it says gentleman and closely with is a site plan waiver, site plan review waiver application. The application was for, it notes that the application was for an office building. The applicant indicated, or the applicant's professional indicated that he was unaware of any previous site plan reviews or prior applications before the Flemington Borough Zoning Board of Adjustment. He represents in the letter here that the building was originally constructed in 1961 and has been used for offices ever since continuously. So there was an advertising and employment agency. According to this letter, there was a couple of different law firms and an engineering office there. And so this was an application for the National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependence in Hunterdon County, who was proposing to occupy the building on a long-term lease starting April 1st, 1992. And so with that application, they submitted a location plan. And so we go on to the next part, which is Exhibit B. Actually, if you look back, if you continue to stay on Exhibit A, it looks like we actually did include the plan, the location plan for that application in 1992. And it is as it is today. You have a one-story frame building, and you have a parking lot in the rear of the site, and obviously Broad Street is the frontage of it. So if we go to Exhibit B, it does appear that the board approved this site plan review waiver application. And notably, I included this specifically because in the second paragraph of the whereas clauses, the board notes in the resolution of approval, the premises were previously utilized as, quote, general offices for Heritage Construction Consulting. And so that is the first indication in the historical records of this property that I found that there was an office building existing on this site. The other thing of note here is that we see references in both Exhibit A and Exhibit B to the RA single family home zone district, which no longer exists here in beautiful Flemington. Interestingly, we have not been able to locate an actual copy of that codified ordinance. It is nowhere in the borough's records. We did file an open request. The town clerk does not have it on file. Your online records are actually pretty great. You go back to 2009, 2012-ish area, but they do not have a copy of that original ordinance. So we have to kind of glean together what was permitted vis-a-vis that ordinance, and we can do that. The good thing is we can do that based upon the site plan waiver review application that was filed, as well as the resolution of approval that the board adopted back in 1992. And in both the site plan review application and also the resolution, we see references to the fact that an office general was a permitted use under that RA single family home zone district. And not only was it permitted, it was actually approved for this specific structure. So we have an office use which has lawfully existed here since at least 1992. And if the author of this 1992, February 19th, 1992 application is to be believed, and the board at the time did, the structure has been occupied by offices since 1961. So we have a long history of an office use on this property. Now, going back to the future, we're in 1997 now. That's when Dr. F he purchases the subject property in 1997 fall. Notably, what he gets then in 1998, in the spring or the early spring, March of 1998, is he applies for, and I'm on Exhibit C now, he applies for and he receives a certificate of occupancy. And this is dated, for the record, March 5th, 98. It's permit number 98-/005. It's signed by your construction official. Candidly, I cannot read that cursive writing.
Gary Zuka.
Okay, there you go. It's
All right. A long time.
And notably in the upper right-hand corner of that certificate, it's noted there, conversion of existing office to dentist office. So that's the first recognition in an official zoning document by the borough that we have a lawfully existing dentist office use here. And I thought that was very significant for this application, because what we're proposing here today is the same as what has been existing for nearly 3 decades. Dr. Munz, she's right there. She's also a dentist. She is in the process of acquiring this structure to continue it for a dental practice. There are no changes proposed to the building. There are no changes proposed to the use. It's simply going to continue as a dentist office. As Ms. Kaczynski noted, the issue really came about, how we got here before the board, is because she filed for a zoning permit. And of course, with the change in the zoning in about 2012, that I'm going to get to in a minute, your zoning officer went through the ordinance, the new zone ordinance, and says, I don't see office permitted here in this ordinance, which is why they were unable to issue the zoning permit, which of course, in most real estate transactions is something that a purchaser will require prior to closing. So that's how we got here today. So before I put up Dr. F to provide the factual basis for the ongoing use of the premises as a dental office, I thought it would be helpful just to point out a couple of other things. In response to my Oprah request, we did receive a handful of other permits issued by your construction office. In December of 1999, I'm looking at Exhibit D. He received permission to reface 2 signs. Presumably, Dr. F was probably changing out the name on the signs to reflect his new business. We see this would be 2001. That's the same exhibit there, Exhibit D, March 15th, 2001. He replaced some furnaces. And then we get to Exhibit E, and I'll ask Dr. F about this and he'll testify to this. We have here, appears to be a plot plan. And it looks like Dr. F received permission from your zoning office to install a 4-foot high fence in the rear side yard of the property. And you can see there it's dated May 18th, 2012. And it bears his name on the bottom of it. So we can see here, based upon the documentation that we provided, that we have a long history of a dental office on this property. It's been recognized in various permits and certificates issued by your zoning officer. We have the, we believe we have established that an office use was permitted under this old RA single family home district. So where are we today? Well, what we know is that in 2012, and it's uncertain to me whether it occurred in the fall or the spring, but at some point in 2012, the RA zone was eliminated in favor of a single family SF zone. And that zone eliminated the permitted office use from the many uses which are permitted in your SF zone. Nevertheless, Dr. F has continuously occupied the property, utilizing it as a dental practice, even through COVID. So we have an ongoing use of the property, which still exists today, which is proposed to continue as a dental practice. So that's my opening spiel. I apologize, I typically don't go on this long, but that's my opening spiel. It's kind of an interesting issue. And unless the board has any questions for me, I would call Dr. F to the stand to testify as to his ongoing use of the property as a dentist office.
Yeah.
Ma'am? Is there another mic, or where does he?
Let's use that one.
Share
One of you. Share that one is best with fun. Some of them work with that. For the record, we just need to be able to see. I need to be visible on the camera, but you will be there. That's perfect.
Raise your right hand. Swear the testimony you're about to give this board the truth and whole truth, nothing.
Yes.
Thank you. Can you just spell your first and last name for us?
First name is Mostafa, Mostafa. Last name is Fakhrzdadeh.
Can you just turn on the video? Should be in the bottom left-hand corner.
Yep. Oh, there I am. All right. Okay, Dr. Thank you for being here tonight. Welcome to the Joint Land Use Board. Why don't you just please pronounce your last name, because I feel terrible. I may have butchered it the first time I attempted to do it, and I want you to correct me.
Farzadeh.
Farzad. Okay. Thank you for being here. Why don't you introduce yourself to the board, tell the board what it is that you do.
My name is Dr. Farzadeh. I work as a dentist. I've been in Flemington since 1990. And I used to have my practice in front of Flemington Mall.
Excuse me, Karen, he's got to pull the microphone closer.
Yeah, real close.
Yeah, as everybody would live in Flemington for a long time, they know the mall went down, and I was one of the last people who moved out of the mall. And I acquired the existing building and applied for a permit. I changed it to a dental office, and
I'll take you for piece by piece. So when did you own, you're the current owner of 153 Broad, correct?
yes,
And you acquired that in late 1997, correct?
yes,
And you operated a dental practice at your prior location, correct?
yes,
And when you moved to 153 Broad, you opened up a dental practice there, correct?
yes,
And you obtained, as I referenced, a certificate of occupancy to convert the building to a dentist office in 1998, correct?
yes,
And since 1998 through 2012, did you operate a dental practice there?
yes,
And did you continuously stay open in your dental practice at that location?
yes,
And post 2012, when it appears that the zoning for the property changed, did you also continue to stay open as a dentist practice?
yes. There was no interruption since I've been moving into that practice. Yes,
So since 1997, you have, or 1998 for the CO, you continuously occupied the property as a dental practice, correct?
yes.
That's all the questions I had on direct for Dr. Farzadeh, and I open him up to the board for any questions of the board's professionals.
We used to go to our professionals first. Do any of you have any questions for this witness and this matter?
I don't know this witness.
Okay, no, okay, anybody from the board have questions for this witness, please? I'm seeing.
No.
Text online, is it here again?
I'm good, thank you.
Yeah. Just when I walk into this quote building, where I'm gonna call it a building, I walk in and it's kind of sectionary. It's, how is it outfitted? It's or fitted out, it's fitted out completely as a medical facility, a dental facility.
Yes,
That's the, yeah, that's the question. It's fitted out specifically as a medical facility.
Right. Thank you. Unless you can, no.
Like I said, you're a sole practitioner, you're the only dentist in your office.
actually, my son is a periodontist,
Okay.
and he works part time also. I used to have other specialists, but basically I'm doing most of the general.
And do you have a hygienist?
No,
How many dental rooms are there?
5 operatories.
5.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. No, I don't think anybody else has any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, actually, sorry, I just have to open up to the public. If anybody from the public have a question, please use the raise hand feature in the room. Or anybody in the room, there's a member of the public with a question. This is your time. Question. Seeing none,
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. Now, I love to spend time before a board, but really, for this type of an application, that's all that there is to it. We've established, I respectfully submit that we have established that the use predated the change of the zoning ordinance. I also respectfully submit that we have established that the use was permitted back in 1992 and also continued in 1997 and 1998, all the way through its present day. As today, Dr. Rupp was open today. So I respectfully submit, I have nothing further unless the board has any questions. I can offer a brief
I have
closing.
a question. Do you know what the date of that building, when it was built?
The closest reference we found, and I also took a look at your tax records, was 1961.
So it was built in 61 and it was occupied as an office building in 1961, according to all these documents.
According to what I've seen, that's
So it was
correct.
never occupied as a house.
Not according to what I've seen. And actually, your tax records also classify it as a 4A commercial property.
Back at what time?
I looked at it as of today, but I also looked at 1997 and it was still classified
Is it,
back then.
I don't know if this is a legit question, but my attorney is talking, so I'm gonna ask it. Is it, is it your opinion that this has always been occupied as an office building based on your research?
Based upon my research, the records that we have obtained, the independent research that we have undertaken, and also, the conversations with Dr. F, who's been there since 1997, it appears that it has always been occupied as an office of some sort. It's correct.
Has it ever been occupied as a residence and office?
You know, like the engineer, Leo Santa wants to be living there at the time.
Kind of like living on the top floor,
It's one story.
operating, it's one story. So,
Yeah, good
there's
job.
no one
Right.
or living somewhere with it.
Sleeping in a down chair.
It's not to say somebody got in the doghouse, at home and had to stay there at night, but, to the best of our knowledge, no, it's never
And
occupied.
is it intended, that it would ever be occupied that way as a work/living situation? Yeah.
The answer is no, but I'm going to look around at my client.
No, I
No.
like my best.
Right, so the testimony is no. that we're
The
not-
testimony is no, it's going to, the use will continue.
Right, so that's what I'm thinking, because we've had this
Walking
come
in,
up.
I'm not envisioning a home, I envision a potential office.
Right. Yes, thank you. So we kind of asked some questions while you were. It's okay.
It's okay.
But I usually go
Whether
to.
whether they were legit or not, he answered them.
Took advantage, but we'll come back to our professional. We usually go professional, board and then public. So
I just, and you may want to do this after they ask their questions. I don't know if you just want to kind of reiterate the law for the board and your understanding. They asked me some questions. I don't want to be speaking for you, but just kind of want to go through how that takes into account the testimony and then what the board's basically being asked.
But there's no, you did not bring up, the purchaser. So for the board, there is absolutely no intention to expand this.
That's correct. That's my understanding. There's no,
Of this building.
I'm not planning on adding on a, yes.
let me answer that in a different way. We have not filed any application to expand the use of the property. We have not filed any, this is not even an application for development, oddly enough. This is just simply a certificate. So there is nothing proposed before the board to modify, the parking or to expand the use or to expand the structure. This is simply to get a certificate which basically memorializes what is already a vested right in our opinion, and we hope the board agrees.
And certainly we could, first of all, it would be implicit in the statutes that are applicable to this approval. We could specifically put in there that any expansion, any change, any enlargement, anything of that nature would require them to come back before this board, which again, they would be required to do anyway, but if the board would comfortable, we could expressly put that in this.
So professionals, questions for this witness?
I didn't have any other, I just, like I said, just wanted to give them the opportunity to get to respect that.
Right, because what you said wasn't on the record, right? So that you weren't giving them the opportunity
was
to put what
answering the
you'd said in the record.
So I'm happy to, unless there's any other questions from, yes.
I do have one question. In the memo that you filed just the other day, you said in here that ordinance 2012-001 was the proof that replaced the RA district.
That's what it appeared to be from the borough's website, but I'm not so sure that that's the correct reference. That's what I saw on E-code. E-code is not always codified
Yeah, I just
correctly.
wanted to
Sure.
confirm that, 'cause I think it was prior to 2010. The earliest master plan I have is the 2010 master plan, and in there, the RA district is not addressed. So I'm pretty certain that zoning must have changed prior to 2010. But I just want to correct the record to the extent that this continues in the future.
So we don't have proof of when that changed then?
No.
This one?
Yeah, it seems it changed sometime between 1998 and 2010.
Okay.
But your SF zone district was adopted, it appears in 2012.
Right.
So that's the subsequent zoning ordinance for this property. I'm not
No,
so,
I think the SF district existed in 2010.
it existed in 2010?
Yeah.
Then there's a error on the E-code codification reference. Okay,
I think that's more likely, given the master plan, would have been adopted.
that's probably right.
Yeah.
Okay, so that happens sometimes. E-code is, we did.
Okay, just one picture.
Yes.
Not just relying on the E-codes and.
No, we followed over. So that's correct.
But that date doesn't actually affect what we have to do anyway. It's just a point of detail and record of when that happened, when that change happened.
Because the evidence presented to the board shows that there was a change of use to dental office and then the aid.
Yeah.
And again, I'll let him kind of tie that all together for you. That's the evidence.
Right.
Shall I summarize?
I have one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if it's for us or for a professional, not for you, but I'm just wondering if, as was mentioned, that if the board deems and moves ahead and approves this request, this application, you were saying that it's very important that anything from this point on that would be changed needs to be they have to come with a, but I want to
If it
make
is
sure.
considered an expansion of a pre-existing non-conforming use, because you're not granting a use variance. If they were here for a D variance, then, as the mayor asked before, that would be something that runs with the land in perpetuity. And then that would be different.
Right.
You're granting a certification of exactly what is there today as a pre-existing non-conforming use. Any expansion as defined by case law, which is too much to go into, you have to basically do it on a case-by-case basis, would then require an effect.
My question at this point, though, related to that, is that do we feel that this is the plan, this is the
You're pointing
plan?
to what the attachment
This
to
is
exhibit A?
exhibit A plan listed as a plan. It isn't a current plan. This was created in February 1992. Would this then become the official plan? We would compare any expansions or contractions or the things that you suggested against. Do we feel this is the sufficient plan to say this is the plan of record?
Well, that's a very good point, and we could discuss, I presume there's going to be a survey that's going to be prepared in connection with this purchase.
We did not, Dr. Mons did not commission a survey. But I also want to note that on exhibit E, there is an updated drawing, which is what I referenced earlier regarding the fence that was installed in the rear side yard. So that wouldn't be reflected on that old site plan from 1992.
Could Dr. F testify as to whether or not this attachment as an exhibit depicts the current conditions and would be willing to use this as the?
I mean, this is kind of rough. This is kind of a partial production. I'm a little uncomfortable
I understand. but I do
relying on
understand
this.
the chairs, we do need a baseline. So if we're not gonna, that's why I was thinking a survey in connection with the purchase.
I'm back and still working. He's got his own firm now. The original surveyor of this property.
Right.
Hysterical.
That's what I'm
Old
saying.
is new.
If the testimony is that this is the site plan, that's the one I'm holding up is in A. The one in E has some of the detail from A, but it's cut off. So I don't think we certainly can't use that.
I just, if that's what we want to go by, I think we need to ask and
We go by this one.
ensure that that depicts the current condition.
That's what I just wanna.
Are we legalizing, by doing this, are we legalizing anything that might, any work that might have been done without permits? Because I don't think that's the something.
No, I'm,
The application. And I,
no, I'm just looking to get, as Tara said, a baseline of if, once we've done this, future requests will come against what, this is the only point at which we're memorializing what the lot consists of.
I think we're just. This moves out by feet.
I would just add, not to overly complicate it, but it's the idea with the certificate is it's the use that's being, it's a pre-existing use which is being permitted to continue. Certainly over the years, and actually it's in the record, Dr. Rev was pulled various permits for minor improvements to the property. I mean, there was a furnace that was done, there was signage that was refaced. That was all done through a standard permitting process, which is overseen by the town's administrative staff and other professionals. So I'm very hesitant to rely upon kind of a rough, Oprah production or something from 1992 that was not prepared by Dr. F or by Dr. Munns as setting the baseline. I would be very comfortable, and I would respectfully suggest to the board just a description of the use of the property if the board deems it appropriate in the resolution with as much detail as you may suggest or the board professionals may suggest would be really a good way of encapsulating what is permitted, what was previously there, and what is continued to be permitted by way of a certificate. The certificate is a unique thing. It's not as I noted before, this is not actually an application for development, which is why there's no site plan, there's no survey. It really has to do with just the use that was there before, which was lawfully there. And maybe I'm getting into tying up my.
We appreciate that, but.
I do, and I agree with you to a certain extent. Signage is not, according to case law, an expansion of the use, that's replacement of the sign, same thing with furnace, same thing with fence. I think what the board is just trying to gauge, and again, maybe they don't have to worry about it with this applicant, but some may think something may happen down the line. If there's an extra dental chair or extra dental space that is then included, so now we have 6 chairs instead of 5. According, even though it doesn't change the use, it expands the non-conforming use. And case law wise, that would have to come back before this board. So I think that's what we're trying to get a gauge of right now. And they may not ultimately care that that happens. But I think that's what you're asking for. So I'm just trying to find.
Yeah, not so much the
something like that.
use of chairs within,
Let me see if there's a survey, just real quick.
the site plan as it exists, because that would be when we come to a change. I can't be able to show an expansion. No,
What I'm saying is an extra chair, I'm not saying things on this. I'm saying if they're going to measure 15 feet on the building, to accommodate them as the expansion. of the building.
Right.
And that would also go to zoning and then be correct.
Yeah, but zoning or anything would compare it against the baseline.
But their expansion would be shown on, they have to submit maybe a version of this, a new survey to show the existing building footprint, what the expansion. So there would naturally be an identification of the existing versus the proposed, rather than any application for change.
That's what there should be. Correct.
Yeah.
Part of your dilemma here is that based on the evidence that's been submitted, there never was a site plan, this in 1961.
Right.
And I did confirm through historical aerials in 1963, there was a building here and it did have a parking lot behind it. And the documentation is being presented when Leo Santawasso made his submission for the change of use. And the documentation he submitted at that time was a survey, it's called the location plan of the property showing what was there, at least as of that point in time. I don't know what the source of this other exhibit that went with the fence. I don't know what that is or where that came from, or like I said, it's only part of the property. So I guess you don't know either what that
No, we
Yeah,
don't
so,
know it.
it's a nice picture, but beyond that, I don't know what that, the only quote official document, to the extent you want to say it's official, is this location plan. Yes. Correct.
We provided that.
Yeah.
And
And apparently,
if this is an exhibit anyway,
Yes.
here's my worry is that at some point somebody comes and we've memorialized something without being really clear about what plan we memorialized. Is that this is an exhibit, I guess I'm answering my own question maybe at this point. This is an exhibit in this, and this can then be referred to if they come with an expansion of the physical footprint of the building.
It could be referred to, they can tell us whether that was accurate or not. And again, we don't have something currently, but something else I'm trying to think about this logically as well. This is not a single family home. This is a commercial building that if there ever was a physical expansion or any change other than your kind replacement fence, anything like that, repaving, would have to come before us.
Right.
Because it would be commercial, not residential. So presumably, you'd see it again in that aspect and then be able to raise all these issues.
And we can mention that in our resolution as well.
We can put all this language in our.
That's what I'm just checking. That, I'm happy.
I'm just trying to think,
If
because
we
again-
would build and recover and any future confusion. That's what I wanted to do with this.
No,
We're memorializing this, we don't want
Absolutely.
future confusion, if you want to calm it, quite possible you might want to expand the building, if it's very successful and I don't know, I want to make sure we're giving that future board everything that they can have.
Agreed, and since we don't have the underlying ordinances to refer back to, I think that, because usually you do, I mean,
Yeah.
and we're kind of at a deficit at this point by that, so I think that helps.
Excuse me, Mr. Farrell, could we have, is there a way for us to capture that 1963 aerial image as part of this record?
I don't know if that's,
it's not gonna, actually, we have current aerials of the property. From, with that,
I think this was. This was just from a board.
okay, well, we have current, I mean, there are current, and I shared internally, because we're having this discussion, we can't find the old ordinance, whatever. And I found that old aerial, photography from 63 to see just when this building got built. The reference from Mr. Sanawasso in 1992, his representation was that he's saying that there was never any site plan approved for this building. And it was built in 1961. The presumption I would take from that is that it was prior to the borough having regulations relating to the submission of site. The document you have that is attached to this 1992 location plans does show 16 parking spaces. Current aerial view of the property indicates there's no parking spaces striped on this lot. So I don't know if the applicant's gonna go straight parking spaces, if that gets into an issue where you have to show ADA compliant. I mean, again, you're just, it just lacks, this type of thing lacks detail. And they're not here for a site plan. They're here for continuing use or non-conforming use. And we have an exhibit that shows parking from I can't read that 82, I guess it is.
92.
92. That wouldn't be compliant with today's standards. And we have an aerial view of the site that says that there's nothing striped out there. I don't know when this was taken, but I went out there today to go to the site, so I have no idea what's out there today.
but like you say, that's separate to the non-conforming.
That's, yes.
As council indicated, they're asking you for a certificate of this pre-existing non-conforming. Statute says any expansion of that use, however that's defined, done on a case-by-case basis, would be done at the time that there was an allegation of the expansion or a request for the expansion. So, I mean, I definitely don't think we should be getting into site plan details. I understand what you're asking for, but when it comes, they would have to show that this is what existed at the time and this is what we have now. And, I don't want to get too much into it because then again, we start opening some cans of worms there.
Right, I don't. I'll check if anybody else has any other questions then, before we close the public hearing on that. Anybody have any, anybody online have any questions?
Questions?
No? Okay, seeing, no. Did you have something, Jim, or you were saying you didn't have anything?
No, I have no questions.
Thank you. Anna's shaking her head. I think that's a no. Don, you good? Mike, you good?
Yeah,
I'm good.
Alright, seeing none, can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
And we opened it up to all the public on vote too.
I thought I did, but
Okay,
I'll
I'm
do it
sorry,
again.
I was phrased.
Anybody in the public want to have a question or comment on this
Right.
application at this point? Comment. You've seen none online, is that right, Alan?
Yes.
Nobody in the room, seeing none, can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
Okay,
Thank
I'm
you.
gonna- we're gonna need to-
Is that all?
I just thank the board for your thoughtful deliberation and consideration of this application. We appreciate your time and all the efforts of you and your professionals, and we respectfully request that you approve this request for the certificate. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to close the public hearing? Can I get somebody online to second that, please?
second.
Thank you. That was Mr. Echo. Can we take a vote, please, then?
Um, Ms. Swingle?
Yes.
Mr. Eckel?
Yes.
Mayor Farrell?
Yeah.
Councilwoman Pissarro?
Yes.
Mr. Campion?
Yes.
Aiken?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes,
Weitzman?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Is anyone?
Appreciate it for this time.
That was just to close the public.
Oh, oh. Take it back. Wait, I was like, that was unanimous. Okay, that was close. Well, okay.
That's all right. You see me, I'm making mistakes up here all the time. The next part is, can I get a motion? Is anybody ready to make a motion to, what was the motion say?
Whatever you want.
Whatever they want. I don't like to make them. I've been told off making motions before, so is anybody prepared to make a motion?
I am, yes.
Yes.
Thank
you.
Go ahead, Nadine, let's see.
As long as we reference NJSA 4055D-68, because that's the specific language. And I don't know what we do about a state survey, like.
Well, let me say this, let me help you out. Do we make a motion to take certain action? Then we can discuss, and as part of that discussion, I can recommend certain conditions that you might want to consider.
Okay.
And then the motion could be amended to incorporate those, and then we can get.
Fire department's right there.
Right there. It's probably going to be our table.
So the motion is,
So the motion is what? To, oh.
yeah, yeah, so, to be, approval to memorialize.
So you're approving the request for issuance of a certificate of pre-existing non-conformity for the tax law.
But we should reference NJSA 4055-8 along with this Kaczynski's recommendations.
Okay, so that's the motion. Need a second for that motion.
So.
We need a
Just a
second for the motion.
clarification, that motion is limiting this to being a dentist's office.
Yes, right, because that's the application that's before them.
All right.
So what if Dr. Lunds decides to sell to a chiropractor in the future, it's gonna come back. Correct.
All right. Do I get a second from us?
Second.
Mr. Eccles, second. Thank you. So now we can discuss the motion on floor, on the table or floor, whatever. Sorry.
That's
right.
On the diet.
We usually stop about now, but we need to just get this done.
Yeah.
So that's the motion.
So, I mean,
Discussion.
so I really hate the idea of every single different use that could possibly be coming back to this site. It does not expand the footprint of this building, having to come before the planning board in the future, or the land use board. You know, it's been, I mean, I can visualize and remember it being law offices. I mean, I remember it. And, you know, so the motion as it stands, having, if she decides to sell the business, again, it is some other office use, that bothers me that this is gonna be repeated again, definition of insanity. It's been so many things for the last 60 years. And
To that point then, can I ask, what is dental office is clearly excluded because they've had to come to this. What else is excluded? What is included in that zone and what is excluded? I mean, we're not gonna go through the whole list, but roughly, what are we opening it? Because so anything that's included in that zone is automatic, they can change it, is what I'm saying,
So,
right?
so the uses in this,
Person switches it off.
so the uses in the SF district, and so the permitted uses include single family home, place of worship, cemetery, municipal use, community garden. So it's.
so everything except for the first one doesn't pay taxes. So we're not gonna let that happen, right? We're not gonna let it ever become something that doesn't pay taxes. Because we have enough of that in this town, right?
And then things are specifically excluded, does that still include offices or is it just dental offices?
No, it can only become a single family home or it becomes something that doesn't pay taxes, a cemetery, a municipal building, a church, a community garden, right? So it's either a single family home, she can convert it into a single family home themselves, if somebody wants to make it to a single family home, which is fine.
Or she could, or it could be converted to another dentist's office. It could be turned over once again from Dr. F to Dr.
That would be allowed within what we're doing now. So within dental offices only, then, right?
The dental office, yeah, because that's what her motion is, it can be a dental office, but it can't.
That's what
be-
the application is.
Right.
Well, are you suggesting that you want to expand that now to allow all, some other uses? Then we get into, and other uses other than just dental, is that what you're suggesting you want to?
Well, I'm just thinking, it's been an office building, we've got an aerial that Bob found showing a parking lot behind it in 1963. So, I just.
But there's no other buildings within that zone that are allowed to do that, except they're only asking to keep it as a dental office.
Right.
So then if it came as presumably changing it to an office would need retrofitting inside anyway, it would be a change, because there's a different requirement within the building, for dental space as opposed to general office. That's correct. We don't allow general office space, and that's that. I know we believe it wasn't general office in the past, but it's been the dental office for so long. I feel that's why I'm feeling minded to give them what they're asking for.
No, I totally
I
understand what you're
I
saying.
don't want to get into listing out now what else it could be, because could get ourselves in a mess of what we agreed and don't at that point anyway. I know.
Similar to what they did in 1992, if they wanted to change it to something else, irrespective of the use issue that you're raising, it would raise the question of site plan. They would have to do what they did in 19, either come in and ask for a waiver of a site plan or obtain a site plan. I mean, it could be different parking, depending on what the use is. There could be different parking standards. There could be, I mean, I don't know, we're speculating here.
Well, that's true. I mean, if they change into a restaurant, then it becomes a, yeah, okay.
If they choose to do that.
So then I'm gonna, like, okay, so that's the way it is. We're gonna keep the motion as it is and then add and pile on what else we might want, like a survey, stuff we want, I don't know.
I don't know, I mentioned the survey, but I think this memorializing this lesson is as good as we should expect to get at this point for this use, for this report, for this application that they're asking. But I was going beyond what was necessary. But if other people feel differently on the board, they can certainly chime in.
So the other conditions I had, just to kind of throw everything on the table. Bob had asked for a copy of the title search, just confirming that there are no covenants or easements as was represented by council. There's also representation that this is a single member LLC. It was the applicant, again, just something to kind of close the loop on it and put that into the record. Any expansion of the pre-existing non-conforming use would require return to this board, as per, and it's an application under section 68, and we would also reference that as well. There's more than a ton of case law that interprets exactly what that is, so that would all fall into line. And again, instead of identifying it here, let for future applicants bring that to the board, because that's what you would be governed by. And that's what I had, and then our standard.
It is so cold. And then they cranked it up to the hot weather incident, yes. Just gonna go down. Okay, so that's our conditions. So does anybody else, on the board have anything they want to say before we go put that motion to a vote? Anybody have anything they want to add? Mike? Mike? He's not on.
I'm good.
We're
I'm
good.
good. I'm good.
I'm good.
So, vote, please, please.
Yep, so we don't have to amend the motion because the motion included any conditions I had. We talked about conditions. Okay, we have a motion in a second. Vote.
Councilwoman Pissarro,
Yes.
Mr. Eckel,
Mr. Eckel.
I'm sorry, Mr. Eckel, I don't know if I.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Carroll,
Yes.
Mr. Campion,
Yes.
Giffen,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Ms. Weitzman.
Yes.
Yes.
Now you're gonna.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone on the board. I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for your time and your attention.
Thank you for your very good,
My pleasure.
Appreciate it. Thank you. So we usually have a break, but, board, we've only got a couple of quick things, so,
Turn on the.
yeah, you
I'll
can
blow it up.
Turn it down, I'll turn it up. whichever way we can. We'll just get these things done and we'll have a break. So I understand the application, that we'll see that that's being carried to the next meeting. So, right?
We do need to discuss completeness in the same manner that Bob had discussed completeness before. I do need to kind of step back from this again. This is
Right.
put together, but I think between Bob and Beth and the board, they can answer all these questions. Because what you would want to do is to deem it complete or incomplete, so that then, Eileen can let them know that that's been done and then they can.
All right. Let's move ahead with that. And so this is application Seabrook Douglas, application 2024-02, block 41, lot 19, 189 Main Street. This is coming up from a similar issue to the last one, a denial, and they're looking for, by the permitting and looking for a non-conforming use certificate. But
Correct. So I did something almost identical to what I did with the prior application. I did an email to the board. I also did an email to the applicant, kind of explaining what the issues were. And I just, again, we don't have a checklist for this, so I'm just relying on the provisions of section 1501 from the ordinance. And I highlighted what was provided. The applicant did do a somewhat admirable job of putting together an explanation of what this thing, property is. What we don't have here is any information on the zone. I'm just going, just literally reading from what I submitted. Item 8, the zone district information, the 9, the description of the property, 10, the description of the proposed. Now, apparently this is not a proposed development, it's an existing structure, but an explanation of how it's currently being used. Going down on item 9, a tax certification as the payment of taxes. Going down to item H, again, a title search on the property to see if there's any restrictive easements or covenants. Item I, again, if there are, if similar to the prior application, if the applicant has a survey of the property, that would be a very appropriate document to submit, as part of this. Again, we go to plans. There are no plans being filed. A survey of the property indicating what's on the property would certainly would be appropriate. The certified list of owners he would need to obtain if he's going to schedule at some point when he schedules for a public hearing. Again, issues relating to the current use on the property, other zoning related information. Now, again, it's not a site plan, they're not here for that. Yeah, we don't have any information relating to parking requirements or lot coverages. That's item 6 under item L, which would be the site plan. So again, if they submitted a survey that would show what the lot coverage is and basic information, that would be helpful. not necessarily sure if it's required in this situation, but it would certainly be helpful. And then it catch what the zoning map is, and properties within 500 feet. Again, I'm just reading from what I indicated here. That's what would be the minimum amount of information to submit as part of this. And similar to the last application, you're going to need some historical information about, obviously, this a four dwelling unit is not compliant with the current zoning. They're going to submit what the zoning is, but apparently what this one is not, it's not compliant to whatever exists there today. Any kind of history on the property, when it became a four, when it was was it built as a four unit dwelling, whenever it was constructed. This appears to be a much older structure. Again, any historical, the applicant heard what the prior applicant submitted, so that would give us some guidelines as to what the board might be looking for.
Yeah, and our attorney, conflict attorneys, and then we can suggest that they ask these questions. No one's not here present right now.
Right, I mean, I think that's also here.
No, I meant our attorney can
I
ask
know.
those questions. We can't ask you those right now. I don't believe. No. As to what, I know it's, I'm sorry, Carl.
Well,
He's looking for a little bit of guidance and.
A couple questions.
Sure, go ahead.
This has been a resident, I purchased this
Come on up
house.
to the, I can't, we have to get onto the recording. And so that people in.
Yeah, my name is Doug Siebert. I'm the owner of this property at 189 Main Street. I live on 76 Main Street. I own quite a few properties in town. I've been in town for 30 years. I've owned this place for over 30 years. When I purchased it, it was a 4-family, and the owner prior to me in 1978 had it as a 4-family. It's been listed on the New Jersey Community Affairs certificate. It's been registered with the state of New Jersey since 1978. It's always been a 4-family, and I'm only here because I'm looking to sell it, and the buyer asked if this was zoned 4-family. So I went down to the building department and I said, I just need a document. And they said, well, it's now a non-conforming use structure. And I said, wow, I've owned it this long. I didn't even know the zoning changed. So I had to send a letter in to find out what I needed to do. And the documentation that I presented was for the burden of proof to prove that it's been a 4-family since 1978, almost 40 years. I've never altered the building. It's been upkept. It's better than shape than when I purchased it. But you're asking for plot plans and surveys, which I could get them, or a picture of the building. But it's really just for me trying to get a certification that it's 4-family can continue.
No, we understand, and you just, maybe it was helpful to you, maybe it wasn't, but you just heard somebody went through exactly the same process.
But it's not a hearing I'm trying, like, do I have to really send this out to people within 200 feet? I mean, it's just a definition of what a house is. Seems a little excessive.
I'm gonna do something we're always gonna accuse. I'm gonna play attorney here. You have to follow the same process that the prior applicant did. There is a notice required. And you did a very nice job in the letter you submitted, but if you have this type of documentation, then you need to submit it. Was this ever, you're gonna maybe have to do an open request to see if this was ever.
But before we go on, when was the zoning change on this one? Because the past one was so far in the past, but this one's much more recent. Is he within the 12-month?
No.
It's just more recent than that.
No, it was it was before I became mayor.
Oh.
Done the last.
So we.
But it's clarified as a 4-family, even with the fire department, I pay, they have a Ford apartment that I pay every year, and they come and inspect the garbage, they give me 4 recycling.
Same as the previous applicant had the same issue, right? You heard that they had the same issue.
It was a commercial issue.
No, it wasn't a commercial issue, it's just, it never.
It really doesn't matter.
So every other multifamily I have in the town, I have to do this. If it's in.
Well, and maybe the others are in
position.
the others might be in a zone that allows it. I don't know.
But what if they're not?
Well,
I mean, it's a grandfather clause that I thought I'd be able to be entitled to. This seems a little like, I didn't know the zoning changed. And I've owned it 40, like, for 30 years.
You know, I think there's and I don't know if this is part of the confusion, but there's a distinction between being deemed a pre-existing non-conforming use, which is a special category that says your, in this case, four-family home
Yes.
was created when the zoning permitted it. And that puts you in a more advantageous position in case you want to expand the building in the future. So if you get the certificate, that would be your status, your pre-existing non-conforming use. If you don't get the certificate, it's not a matter of the use might not be conforming, but it's not a matter of that you're not grandfathered. Unless there's evidence that the building was created illegally without a D variance, but there's, I think there's a distinction that maybe needs to be made between getting this status as a certificate of non-conforming use versus being told that you need to remove units from the property. Those are two different things. So I just want to make sure that's clear.
Well, a future buyer,
I understand they want that certificate. It creates value. for
he's
them.
allowed to use it as a four-family future buyer without this non-conformance issue, right? I mean, it's always going to be a four-family whether or not I get the certificate. Like you can't take that away from what I'm doing as a future buyer, correct? So what is the purpose of, like, what are we trying to achieve?
We're trying to document for the record what exactly what this is, what the current zoning would allow, how this deviates from the current zoning, and how this came to be. Again, to the best of anybody's ability, when was this house built 100 years ago?
Yes.
Was it built as a four-unit dwelling? Again, you got to do whatever research you can do to make the best case you can make, and maybe the information exists, maybe it doesn't exist.
Can I just interject a second, please? Because I appreciate what you're saying. We're getting into weeds and discussion that I think because Cara can't say anything, it makes it more awkward because she's conflicted, right? So we just appointed a conflict attorney. Am I right in thinking that we're in a situation where you need to communicate with that conflict to the other attorney?
Do you rather this is a business or is it
No, I'm
an individual?
individual. I'm an individual. I'm an owner, and it's a four-family house that I own.
It's like you're not an LLC or.
No, it's only for years, and now I'm like, I don't quite understand what I'm trying to achieve.
For the previous application, can I talk to you about that, Cara, that they've been speaking, you've been in communication about how to get this process through for the previous application.
Right.
So that's what I'm wondering. Our wonder now is for Mr. Siebert to have more clarity on what he needs to achieve. Maybe we need to get you can now, we've appointed the other attorney into place of Cara. Do you understand why we had to do that? Because she's conflicting.
I understand, but the checklist.
So we've appointed somebody else, and then we can have that attorney talk to you about and answer your questions more clearly on the legal aspects of what is required to happen. Because I'm feeling that you're not clear on that. Would that be a good first thing?
The checklist isn't even really
the checklist is irrelevant
for this, right? So now,
well,
you're asking me to do a lot on a checklist. That's a very expensive proposition. And it doesn't exist.
Well, that's why
your checklist, right? You're saying some of it's good.
I'm reading from provision of the ordinance that talks about the type of information. They don't have a specific checklist that has this on it.
The reason I suggested that we have you talk to the conflict attorney that we just appointed is that then you can get better clarity. I'm not a lawyer.
Oh, I know. I'm not
He's
either.
not a lawyer, and it seems like you have legal questions to ask, and I think is that fair for me to suggest that you do that? And then we want to continue this process as quickly as possible.
Yeah, no, I know.
On the agenda for you, because I understand you're in the same situation as the previous that you went to, there's a sale, and then that you want this to.
There's a minimal escrow. We do need to, because it's really not clear in the ordinance. I requested a minimum of $500, which is not gonna go very far. If you start talking to the attorney for the conflict attorney, you're gonna be taking those fees. I do recommend that you should probably talk to maybe even the attorney that was just here before he did, you saw all of the work that he did and all of the proofs and all of the history that he provided to the board. Those are those same things that the board is going to try to.
It's just a
And
very
he's
expensive
to-
proposition
I-
to just prove that
yeah.
I have a four-family for 40 years.
We are standing by the law and regulations.
I
We
know.
can't do it other than the way we just did it for the previous applicant. We have to do at this point. And that's how I understand it.
It's kind of
I'm
stuff.
not legal representative, and that's how I understand it. So would you want us to go, do you want us to deem this complete at this moment, or do you want to talk?
I don't
to
know
the
if it
attorney?
needs to be complete.
Sure, we can't,
Yeah.
no, we can't.
No, you would be deeming it,
The process is we deem your application complete, and then we can schedule a hearing of that, which is exactly what we did with these people.
If he's submitted enough
The hearing,
information.
at which we can vote yea or nay, that we can give it to you, see what I'm saying? So we were wanting to put this along for you, so we put you down as a completeness hearing. This is what we're supposed to be doing right now, but we don't feel that, I just wondering if you're even at the point where we understand where we're going, so we can't do.
I do understand, I'm just,
We need.
I'm frustrated because I have other multifamilies that, because you change the zoning, I get caught in the middle of it in the crosshairs, and it's a very expensive proposition for something that I just want.
I'm not able.
I know, I'm not blaming anybody
So I think,
specifically.
you know, and I was on the planning board then, but I think that, you know, when the planning board and the council changed that zoning, it was to prevent any more large
Right.
Victorians in the area being cut into pieces. So that's, but that doesn't mean, I don't know where your other properties are, Mr. Seaver, it doesn't mean the other properties aren't still in areas that allow it. You know,
No, I understand, but this one specifically is one that.
right, I understand that, but when the zoning got changed to not allow single-family homes to be anything but single-family homes, and made it illegal to have a, you know, multi-family home.
Grandfathering doesn't.
That's why I asked that question in the beginning of this. I thought, but it's because there was nothing to be grandfathered. We don't have any proof that it was there. We know, I mean, that house was built as a single-family Victorian home in the 1800s. And the HPC probably can give you a history on the House Historic Preservation Commission. They can probably give you a history on the house because they are the keepers of the histories.
Registering in the state of New Jersey for the community affairs.
But that doesn't tell us how it got there.
No.
Of what the.
It only tells us what is there. It doesn't tell us how it got there. The way that Mr. Orth showed, how, you know, when it got there, that there were pictures showing a parking lot 60 years ago that.
But I can continue to use it as my family, and then so can
And that's
anybody,
what we're
right? I
looking for.
mean, what's the difference?
So you won't be able to get a certificate. if you
A certificate of what?
Non-conforming use.
Non-conforming
Yeah,
use.
which is.
May not be a certificate of occupancy.
When you
It
get
doesn't
that,
pass on.
it's grandfathered, that's your grandfathered in.
That's where the zone,
Right.
the way the
So,
zoning officer.
we can't
That's where we're
deem
at.
it complete because we don't have anything to deem complete at this point. So, and that's the process we have to go through. I'm going to suggest that you have to talk to the attorney that we've appointed that can help you deal with this.
I just have a couple of questions. So, I did try.
Can you just tell us your name before we say anything, just for the record?
My name is Jennifer Stowe. I'm helping him,
Right.
kind of, sort of. I did ask for an Oprah request. I requested an Oprah. They said I need to specifically ask for what I wanted, which was fine. I specifically asked for zoning changes and they told me that will not show up on the Oprah. So whereabouts do we go to find when the zoning changed and what are the notifications? Like like how are people notified when the zoning was changed? Given that he's been in Flemington for, you know, 30 years, where was the notification that it changed? Was it just in the Democrat or was there a letter sent? Like how would he have known that? So he could come before the board within the 12 months?
Well, the zoning is contained within the master plan, right, Beth?
Yes.
So any changes to the master plan and all the master plan documents are online, so you can go to look at all those.
Master plan change.
So
Which one?
the best I can tell you is in 2010, the SF district permitted only single family homes. And so I think that's your.
I'm in a TR district.
I'm sorry, you're in the TR district.
Whatever that means.
So in 2010, the TR district permitted 2 family homes and That's it, and as far as residential use go, so permitted two-family homes. So it seems that if your property was converted to a four-family home and it was done so legally, it needed to have occurred prior to 2010, which is, I think, consistent with your documentation. And so the question is, when did the four-family home start on that property? And what was the zoning in place at that time? That's basically the two questions that this board needs to understand from you in order to give you that certificate. When did the four apartments get created? What was the zoning?
So where, is there any suggestion on where he would go to find that prior to 1978? Because he has proof of that as of 1978, but how, like, where would he, what direction would he even go to find that?
To prove the zoning.
So, it would be, it's two things. So one, you can go back in the house records, try to figure out when the four families were created. It might have been created before zoning. It might have been done before zoning was even adopted for the borough. Maybe it was done in 1940, for example. And so there might be some evidence in your home records, maybe in the historical records, that indicate the history of the home and when multiple families were living in it. And so if you can document that it was done prior to the borough zoning, like for example, in 1940, I forget when the zoning was originally adopted in this town, it's typically 60s, maybe early 70s. That would potentially be the proof that you need for the certificate, or you need to prove that that maybe the four family home was created when zoning was in place, and at that time the zoning permitted the four families. And so if you want to try to find the zoning information, I don't know exactly what your Oprah read, but that's the right avenue, is to ask for all zoning changes that might have occurred during this time period. The borough may or may not have those ordinances.
I actually did specifically ask for that, and they told me that I would not, that wasn't possible.
Okay.
Like, I was filling it out standing there, and she said, you're wasting your time.
Yeah, I mean, for the board's information, I made similar requests for the last application, and staff were unable to locate also.
Because my concern is, like, you could run a title search and you can have your title search policy. It's not gonna show anything. It's only gonna show easements.
The other place you might want to check is the Hunterdon County Planning Board. I don't know when they started, but they keep ordinances and master plans for each of their communities, including Flemington.
Okay.
So you may want to go to the planning board, review it as far back as you can to try to find out when that zoning changed. They might, it's not guaranteed, but they might have something.
Yeah, because that's the hard part, is finding, because again, it's not gonna come up in a title search. And if there's no records with like pulling an Oprah, it's kind of like we're hitting that brick wall. So
I've seen in other communities, I've seen evidence submitted that dealt with the type of, in that case, they were, I mean, this is very unique, but just to give you some inspiration, maybe they were looking at the electrical panels. In this case, it was a two-family home. They were looking at the electrical panels, which had the manufacturer name. We were matching the manufacturer to a company that closed in, I don't know, 1968 to determine that
Four panels, like
Yeah.
in this case, if you have floors, they've
Yeah.
got panels separate for each.
It's, I mean, that's very,
That's the evidence.
but you know, if you look at the home, if you look at the property records, you might find something that indicates when each of those units were created. So that's a very specific example, but I just share it to maybe give some inspiration about what else.
The Hunter County Planning Board is one, Historic Preservation Commission. One of your neighbors, Mrs. Zink, has lived there forever. She might have some institutional knowledge. She was right a couple houses down, towards North Main, Street, a couple houses up from you, from that house. Mrs. Zink, and she's been there forever.
And what does that proof give us? It gives
Historic.
us the answer.
Showing that it was existent before, so that you're asking for a continuance of a non-conforming use, we have to show when it became that use, so long enough.
to be clear, if we got a testimony, if we got some evidence from electrical boxes, is that gonna be sufficient if there's nothing else we can find? And I'll certainly go to the county and see if they have anything, but again.
HPCS, really asking it to be, I live in a historic home, so they've done a lot of research on the houses. And so one of the things we found when we're talking about, the electrical boxes, some of those you might have still hanging around somewhere, some old knob and tube. or like some, it might still be sitting in there.
It was always.
It may always-
Always panels when I. got
Right,
there.
but if you go behind it, we still have, I don't wanna say they're dead wires because it's all broken. But the HPC was able to help us to even get down to, some of the framing and things for our house, because our house is historic, what do you call it, historic,
Preservation.
I'm contributing, so it's built in like 1908, 1909. You might be able to find things like where the plumbing changed. We know the plumbing changed in our house over the years. So there may be something like, I think of our old plumbing, we just had something come out. There was literally on the pipe like 1948, something had been done there. So there is some way without going into all your walls, because you never want to do that.
So when it defines when it changes, then how does that apply to the zoning? That's what I'm
Because
saying.
you're trying to prove that it's been a four family and we're trying to kind of pin down, before the 1978, we're trying to pin down when they converted it prior to the zoning. And we don't know when the zoning,
If they did it after the zoning, then.
if you made it, you wouldn't be permitted to make it a four family after the zoning change.
It would have been.
But it'll continue to exist.
You need to prove when the zoning changed. To not allow it, but also you need to prove that you were in existence before that, because if you prove that the full family was in existence after the zoning change, that's an illegal change. Right, we know you don't have that in this situation, but you have to prove the distance of time between the two things. I think you're.
Yeah, no, I understand completely what you're saying. My concern, my biggest concern is proving when it was done, when there's no changes to the property.
Well, you can also ask for a record of any permits that were issued for this property.
Yeah.
That might, I mean, I don't know what's happened here, but again, you're building up the best record you can build up.
Yeah, but
To make the
previous
case.
applicant had permits and different things, they saw the different levels of edit, and that was great. All evidence was good.
And I think,
Okay.
Eileen, can they submit over, would they be able to search for planning board approvals that were?
Yeah, and actually, I think I did that,
Okay.
and, I don't think anything came up with this block and lot.
When you
So I
get
think it
over-
was, there was no
make
site
sure-
plans, no applications. I have minutes from the board, going back,
1960s.
1960s, and I could email them to you. You can go through all of those.
When you do your Oprah's, you're Oprahing a record or a set of records, they have to be very specific, like, give it to you this date, or, you know.
Yeah, it's just hard when you don't know exactly.
Well, it's really.
When you're asking for a zoning
You
change.
got an old town that just,
Yeah.
didn't keep a lot of records. Back in then, you got a lot of little towns that didn't.
That's not unusual.
It's not, unfortunately.
And there's always a gap between when the files were paper and when they went online. I feel like that I run into that a lot in different towns as well. There's always like a missing chunk. That people have trouble with.
Right, so we're doing lots of like leads to try it out, try that, and say we can have the attorney that's gonna sign to this, just quickly.
We'll see where we can go first and then.
Yeah, this is a little far-fetched, but does he have a survey of the property?
Do you have a survey from when you purchased?
I must have had it, sir.
You may want to check with some of the old-time surveys, right? If you had a survey that somebody did on this thing from 1970 or 1960, on the survey, the surveyor would have indicated what the structure was. It was a single family or it was a four family, whatever. And you're searching for evidence.
Right.
Because the board needs evidence in order to come to some sort of a decision.
Right.
See how you go, so we'll get the other attorney.
You're such a wonderful owner, we just don't want you to sell. So.
Yeah, if you want to
I was a
sell.
lot younger in 1996, I could handle it. I'm just.
When you talk to the attorney as well, I say you have multiple properties like this, what's the options? That's a question for them. I'm just suggesting. That's
Concerned with all of them. I'm concerned with them.
Let's do one step at a time. We'll figure out where the zoning
Thank
change
you.
is.
Sorry we couldn't help you further, but I feel like we've given you some guidance and some pointing of where to go. I'm trying to help you get this sorted out, honestly. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That would be nice.
All right, So, we're going to item 14.
Did you want to deem that incomplete?
Oh, do we have to do anything specific? Or
We did not do anything because the clock is ticking, on, if it's completeness, 45 days. Because if they need to, have a hearing, they won't make the 14th if it is being deemed complete. That way, the next meeting isn't until June 9th.
Oh, I
So,
think we need some work to do, so I think we have to have a motion to declare the application not incomplete. Can I have the motion? Ms. Swingle, you second, Mrs. Ramos seconds, we'll take a vote on that then, please.
all right. Ms. Swingle?
Yes.
Councilwoman Fasaro?
Yes.
Mayor Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Campion?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Giffen?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Today's the 30th, isn't it?
Yeah, I lost them.
We lost Jim.
Lost-
Okay.
We should have said that Dennis would come back in.
Yeah, Ms. Whiteson?
Yes.
Mr. Beckle?
Yes.
Mr. Cho? Do you have no,
I think I need to recuse myself. I live within 200 feet.
okay.
Do I?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've been listening, but I.
All right, so now we're going to, I'll be quick with these last ones. Chair items, item 14. Next meeting is May 14th, regular meeting. It says public hearing works for, but they've.
Because we made the announcement to continue without further notice.
Mhm.
So we would have to make another we would have to be on the agenda and we would have to make another continuation unless they were going to provide new notice. I don't know what the board,
When was
that's,
the last time they did? You know,
I think the last time they came before us, yeah.
well, that we know, but for some reason, I feel like we asked them to notice again, so they did. Was that before the last time they came?
You mean, do we ask them to just notice for June?
well, they had a letter to carry the hearing to 3/22, an extension of time. They had an extension in March.
Do we know at all if the relief was going to change based on the present plans? I don't want to get talking to this too much.
Right.
Yeah, but I didn't know if there was any discussion that it.
The representation was they were modifying the plan.
Right.
I mean, that was their
A
representation.
significant.
Yeah, they were taking units out, and they were making adjustments.
Well, what we can do if, so let's.
The last time I checked, the notice was on 1/23 in January of this year,
Okay.
January 23rd.
So this other certificate, does that application come in?
Yes, that has come in, that was distributed, to everybody.
So that would be
That's
similar
the
to.
ironworks, that is very,
your
it's similar,
plan.
but there's a little bit of a difference if, it does not meet the, certificate of non-conforming use, then they alternatively ask for a conditional use.
As for, okay. So that's definitely a little bit different. That one would definitely, conditional use or a D?
I think.
It's not, it's.
Well, the same thing
It's not
because if they don't
it's
meet
not-
all the
it's
conditions.
not-
Well,
But it's not allowable, but it was only changed recently. When did they, the zoning changed for that one?
yeah, but what I'm getting at is.
It says
if they
in-
ask for,
In the alternative, the board may grant light industrial conditional use approval to applicant, given the applicant's use involves the manufacturing of metal products using, they're asking for.
It's in the same place.
It's in the
as
new
Golden
zone.
Valley. It's in the new zone.
Why is he applying to the board for a certificate when that was done less than a year ago?
Because it was denied.
Oh, I'm sorry, I haven't changed all of the application yet, so it's denied.
All of these are all permit denials.
Yeah,
So wait a minute.
zoning denial.
Zoning denials, sorry.
But the first two make sense, because Mr. Rinaldi could not have issued it.
Right, no, this one was caught, I think, by our fire marshal. Because this guy was doing all kinds of stuff in there, like all kinds of stuff, you know, like, the fire marshal was quite upset. He's the one who caught it.
But the denial definitely included that the specific use they were using was not what was not allowed.
It
Even though
wasn't allowable
Yeah,
before we changed the
probably
zone.
not
correct.
Before we changed
Okay,
the
that
zone.
makes sense.
We shouldn't.
So,
There was discussion.
so.
Yeah, I don't wanna, exactly, I don't wanna have, but to get to my point
Mm.
of this can't be scheduled for a hearing because. we
No,
don't have
no, it would have to be
completeness.
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 Okay,
Okay,
completeness
that's
on
what
that.
I wanted to get at.
Next meeting would be completeness on that one. We can't do it. We can't do both things like we did with the Real Smart.
No, and there's not enough time to do a notice of hearing, and because it's a little bit different. I had spoken to Kara about that, and
Right.
do completeness,
So it'd be
see what that
completeness
comes.
only for that.
So what could technically happen is we could also put Seaburn on for completeness.
If they come with some, yeah,
They
yes.
could do that too. I'm just trying to get your agenda for the next meeting. so
Yeah,
it
they
makes
could.
sense.
I doubt if you'll have more information, and it's only 2 weeks away.
But,
But
and I'm
it's
not
feasible.
commenting on him, I'm
Mm.
commenting on the checklist that we used for your smile, so we should be using the same
Yeah,
criteria.
that's the same case. I know that.
I don't think that's.
Right, but given the items, I don't know. So you have to do a little more research.
Decide whether we're asking them to renotice.
We haven't yet, that's why I'm trying to get to
Okay.
the rest of the agenda so we can kind of work back.
Well, then, and then I want discussion of the checklist, which is what we need.
Which is
the
gonna be
one that
for
signs that.
So Wordsville, what I can, but it sounds like we're going to, because I also have two resolutions also, so it sounds like we want to have a meeting, so regardless. I think we leave Wordsville, I can reach out to Robin and ask her. If based upon the plan changes that they're made, well,
I
just basically kind
thought
of.
they'd asked for June, am I wrong?
June 25th,
They'd asked
yes.
for June 25th.
But whether they need to.
Renotice,
You can
because they
check with the
need you,
neighbors to read.
we don't know if they need to renotice.
Right.
Let me put it this way, there's no statutory set requirement that you can only carry a certain period of time. Usually a board will just make that decision. Usually a 200-foot list is good for 6 months. So that's one of the things we kind of think about sometimes, and if the last notice was June, it's quite possible that a lot of owners could change in the next 6 months.
Do
Okay,
we
which would
also,
be to renotice for that purpose. What would require renotice would be if the relief that they're changing by way of these revised plans, which we haven't seen yet, which would require. it. So I
that
think
would be
dig a
the
little
question,
bit.
we were told there would be major changes to the plan, so it would, I'm asking you, would that be a criteria for renoticing?
Yes.
Because then people would need to know that different plans are coming in,
Yes.
right? Okay.
Yes. So,
Then let's
I mean.
talk to them on that basis then, see.
Exactly.
Excellent. So generally, I'm hoping that we will have quite a lot of time to do the discussion of the checklist next meeting. Plan. Resolution compliance. I put this on because we're having, it hasn't really been done. And I want to start doing it. That's the real simple thing is when we vote on these applications and we then create a resolution, we vote on that and that becomes in the record. We, as a town, have not been as good as we should maybe at checking that those things that we deem need to get done. So what I'm looking to do in terms of resolution compliance is I need a little bit of work for you, I'm afraid. We need to kind of pull together what resolutions that we have approved that aren't currently yet built, that are still in construction or available to be run, because those are the ones that we need to be checking. You know what I mean? Like, so Spice Factory, we issued a resolution, they haven't completed it, but I want to create a list of those resolutions, so then we can each meeting get an update from whoever is deemed to be responsible for resolution compliance of our professionals, an update of where they're at.
Well, I know that the Spice Factory, it has been going through compliance. I mean, in general, I know that Bob and Beth have reviewed, like, I mean, it really depends on the applicant if they're going to submit plans for compliance. Cut Glass never did, so, you know,
Right.
are you looking for those kind of applications? Because Cut Glass is.
Until Beth and I and John Hatch and Richard Giffen started making them. So they never did resolution compliance. And they've been.
Who was that?
Union Hotel.
That's not quite it. They did do resolution compliance. They still had outstanding items.
Oh,
But,
okay.
but to your point, it was it's ongoing.
Well, okay, that's more accurate.
Just working on the basis of what doesn't get checked doesn't get done. Then, I just want to put it on our list that we're asking.
And how far back would you like to go for those resolutions that are not built? I mean, I don't know, I mean, I can make a list. I mean, it's
Make a list of boards.
certainly in all of my annual reports, but I just don't know how far
Work
back
together,
you would like to
put a
go.
list together of all of them, I can work out what I'm thinking of, the one that is good at looking at.
Okay.
All right, we'll work
All
together.
of my annual reports would have all of the resolutions that have come in there, so
True.
should not be that difficult to
Right.
compile.
Yeah, that's why I'm
Yeah.
not really, it's just a little bit of just
Yeah.
pulling something together. Ones that are obviously complete, we don't need to look at, because that's done.
Well, like
We start the
tidbits
process.
as well, that's, one that's still out there, but they haven't pulled any for, Millie's Luncheonette tidbit. Oh, well, that's their LLC, so,
That's a company name, was Tidbit, Kayla's Tidbit.
yes.
Yeah, so things like that, I wanna, so that we're aware, some of the people on this board weren't involved in the decisions, and they're not aware of what's out there. So I'm just looking to pull that together. So we can do that for next meeting, and then we can talk about it a little bit next meeting. All right.
Resolution compliance comes in when they attempt to do something like tidbits, if they want to go to construct, then they'll be resolution compliant. Do we have a plan? Did you do everything you were supposed to do before you go to the next step? But there are sites out there, Captiva, we act on with conditions and project dies and you never see anything.
Right, like, so one of the questions, Bob, is that, like, with Cut Glass, part of their conditions in their resolution was that they had to save elements of the Peach Basket Factory, they had to save that cupula, they were supposed to reuse it. And nobody knows what happened, like, where is
That
that?
should have been implemented when they came for they must have obtained a demo of that.
Right. Right?
So when they issued the demo permit, that's when somebody should have looked at.
Right. So what I'm doing with introducing this is I don't want this to happen on my watch. Is basically what I'm saying, is I wanna see what we're supposed to be looking at and make sure we're doing it. Whether we're just asking the question and then it can stimulate, do we need to go ask this person and this person, and just look into it.
And we
Well,
talked
I'm not suggesting you do this, but some boards, when they vote on it with conditions, they set a clock. You have 6 months, you have 9 months. If you want to maintain your approval, after which your approval dies.
Well,
I'm not suggesting that's a good idea, a bad idea. I'm just saying that that's what some boards do.
Right. Well, sometimes have that, but it was like 10 years or something. wasn't it? It's fine.
Well, it was 5 and then it
Conditions of limit comply with the conditions of
Right.
approval.
So for instance, in order to comply with the conditions of approval, one of the things you may have to do is to revise your site plan and get it signed by the chair and the secretary. That's not done within 6 months. Your approval, you either apply for an extension or your approvals.
And you'll have applicants come back for an extension, say, oh, I did this and this, but I haven't gotten that yet because it was a DE, but whatever.
Right, and that's certainly something to look at for our future resolutions, right?
Another thing, well,
We can't retro do that.
have to discuss that.
Right, and it can be part of our, yes, we can discuss that.
I think that needs to be an ordinance change as
Okay.
well, but we can talk about
Right.
that. I can
No, I
confirm
can
that.
see that because
I
that's
can
a
confirm
dead-
that, yeah.
Right.
Something else that I have seen that's been helpful and I've started to, I'll do it privately is submit, when you go in for resolution compliance, submit a copy of the resolution condition line items, and this is what status of each one is. So again, it's just really organizing it the same way like Bob kind of organized the checklist, makes it much easier
Right.
to follow.
Yeah.
So here's the 10 conditions and here's where the 8 are, and here's the status of the other 2. And
That is what I'm looking for. Absolutely, I like that a lot.
that's the goal.
Right.
But I'll look at that one because I've always been a little uneasy about that.
Okay,
But I do think that if it's implemented, it's to go to people.
yeah, I can see that's a major, that's a large change. Right, okay, so that's what we're gonna start looking at. It's, the next thing we'll start moving. Anybody else have anything they want to bring up in this section, or do you want me to move on to bills? Okay, can I have a motion to audit the bills? They were distributed quite late. At 6 o'clock.
There was a line of them.
Hopefully everybody saw them. And you didn't, and
I didn't know.
and luckily I went to go print something up and I saw them. Yeah. So anybody that did see them, can I have a motion to audit the bills? So, can I have a second on that thing? It'll have to be somebody. Jim, is that you?
No, I was down.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Right, can we take the roll on that? Please?
Sure. Ms. Swingle?
Yes.
Mr. Eckel?
Yes,
Mayor Carroll? Abstain. Ms. Pizarro? Abstain. Mr. Campion?
Thanks, gone.
Ms. David?
Yes. I did.
Mr. Hill?
Okay, yes. I'm sorry, I disappeared too. My whole screen went blank for about 5 minutes. Then I came back.
And Mr. Show?
Yes.
Right, thank you. All right, do we need to go for executive session?
We don't, the only follow-up I'll just say is I will check in with what's going to.
Thank you. Thank you much. All right, can I get a motion to adjourn? Second, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Very much.
Thank you. Nice.
Take care.
Everybody in the grade on.
What is that?
What did you say,
Say
Jim?
again?
I said, see everybody in the gray dawn.
Right on.
Okay.
That's some sort of reference.
Yeah.
You could end the meeting. Karen, if you could end the meeting.
I pressed, oh no, I didn't.
That